is time. It's your boy Divine Sense Boxing back in the building. Salute to everyone. The first ones dropping in the building early to get this topic popping. Before you do anything else, make sure you hit that like button and then you vote in the poll. There's a poll that is going on live in the chat right now. Make sure you let the people know how you feel. It's a very simple poll. All right. The question is, when it's all said and done, who will have a better career? I got Tank, Haney, and Shakur, and Garcia. That is Ryan Garcia, obviously, as your four options. Let me know by voting in that poll. We're going to get this topic going here in the next few moments. I got somebody someone in backstage named Joseph. Not familiar with who you are, so I'm going to bring you in, Joseph, here just in a moment. Just hang tight. As I kind of introduced the topic of tonight's live stream. So if you guys were a part of the live stream last night, we also talked about Devin Haney. It was a little bit different. We talked a little bit as far as the comparison between him and Floyd Mayweather. Can Devin Haney eclipse Mayweather's career? Some people agreed. Some people thought maybe. Some people said, ain't no way possible. We had somebody come in here and voice their opinion about that. We had a great conversation last night, great live stream, and hopefully we can replicate that tonight. Tonight, though, however, I'm going to be a bit more specific. And ironically enough, I posted a photo on Instagram. And by the way, if you're not following me on Instagram, you need to get on that because there's a lot of topics that sometimes blow up and sometimes it gets a bit heated. And also, of course, all of my updates when I'm going to go live, I do countdowns. That way you guys don't miss the notifications here on YouTube, which happens all the time. So if you're not following me on IG, make sure you're doing that. But I posted a photo last night of basically the artwork of the topic that I talked about last night. It was a picture of Haney, Garcia, Shakur. It's like pretty much everybody in this one photo. And that photo blew up. We got couple hundred likes on there. Comment section is blowing up. It's a huge debate, huge topic right now, and rightfully so, and good. Like, that's what I want. That's what I want people to do. I want people to discuss it so we can chop it up, and then that just continues to add pressure on these fighters to make these big fights happen so we can figure out who's the best. That's the whole point, right? So I thought, you know what, since the conversation is continuing to blow up, then I'm going to do a part two, essentially, and that is tonight. So I want to first recognize my man Omega Red in the building. What's up, Omega, man? Mangus Allen, of course, I'm always expecting him to come in early. Devin Blocker in the building. Was good, bro. And Malcolm Willis, just dropped into the building. What's good with you? All right, I know a lot of people are going live right now, so it might take a little bit of time for people to start to filter in here, but nonetheless, we are going to cook. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in this gentleman, Joseph, who's waiting backstage to see what is on his mind. And we'll get this conversation rolling. As I said, don't forget to vote in the poll that's up here on the chat. Let the people know what you feel. It looks like the poll is starting to get split up here, which is good to see. So far, 57% says Shakur will have a better career. We got 29% saying Haney and 14% Tank. Nobody voting for Ryan Garcia thus far, but let's see how it ends up by the end of this live stream. Joseph, can you hear me?
Yes, of course. Thank you, man. And thank you for letting me on the panel. I appreciate it, brother. And yeah, I was recommended to this channel from a mutual listener of ours, a gentleman by the name of Frank Bay. He thought that he really enjoyed, I guess he was on your show last night, and he was enjoyed the conversation. So he thought that I would be a welcome addition. He said you were really respectful. And so I'm all for that. So thank you for giving me this time, brother. And thank you for being the gracious host. By the way, beautiful mic there, man.
Oh, appreciate it. Yeah, I get a lot of I get a lot of comments about it, man. It's out of the ordinary, but you know that's
no, it's cool. See, I'm a musician as well, and we're always looking for mics to enhance the timbre of our vocals. So, yeah, you got a good one, man.
Most definitely, I appreciate it. Yeah, and you know, to be honest with you, it's not even that expensive. I think it cost me maybe $200, maybe 250.
Yeah, yeah.
And it does a great job. It's a fantastic mic. So
Well, what it
the
does,
idea
and
that
just without going into the technical parts of it, it makes your voice sound a lot more round through the speakers. It makes it sound more
yeah,
full, gives it more bottom end, makes it more crisp on the highs. Yeah,
yeah,
very,
definitely,
very
definitely.
nice.
Definitely. Yeah, that's I was looking for a mic that was affordable and good. So the idea that you need to drop 500, 600, $700 on a mic is not necessarily true unless if I had a professional podcast studio, then maybe, but just chilling in the crib, just need something that that works well, right? So yeah, man, look, I'm not quite sure exactly what you wanted to talk about. I'll pose a few questions in the chat for people to talk about, and of course, you can give your opinions. I see Jared. What's up, Jared? I see you in the chat, bro. Welcome. People are going to start filtering in as long as as far as the conversation goes, and as time goes on, people are going to continue to filter in, and the conversation will probably get a bit spicy. Which, out of good faith, and as boxing fans, that I would assume that everybody is. I hope everyone is that drops by. Then that's what we want, right? We want healthy conversations, and like I said earlier, this is added pressure. This is added conversation. It's added energy to figure out. All right, so who exactly is the best from 130 to 140? We spend a lot of time talking about Bud and Spence and 147 and Bud being pound for pound, but is he really the best yet? Because he hasn't beat Spence. Spence is the best at 147 currently, in my opinion.
Yep,
Bud's got to get past him to be able to say, you know what, man, I beat the best at 147, so
that's
therefore
right.
crown my ass. I am the fucking pound for pound. But in my opinion, you can put him on the pound for pound list, but
Of
is he
course.
indeed the best? Well, like I said, Earl's right there. So 130 to 140 is also part of that conversation. And I
Hmm.
was saying last night that in my opinion, Devin Haney has the highest potential to conquer multiple weight classes and potentially be in the conversation of being pound for pound. There's a lot that goes into that. I got to unpack it in a lot of different ways. A condo, what's good, bro? I see you in the building, bro. Uh, First and foremost is the physical standpoint, right? When we look at fighters and the potential of being able to move up in weight classes, you have to take into consideration their frame, right? Are they tall? Are they short? Do they have reach? Do they have the potential to grow into bigger weights to be able to deal with bigger fighters? And Devin Haney being 5'9", 5'9.5", with I believe he has like a 72, 73-inch reach. I believe he has the frame to be able to move up even all the way up to 147 and get into those weight classes and win belts at those weight classes. And I also think that he has the skill, the boxing ability, because the name of the game is to hit and not be hit. And in my opinion, be talking about the sport for the better part of a decade, it's one thing that I've kind of stood very firm on is that this is the sweet science, right? This is not a strongman competition. It's not about who hits harder, who has the most power. It's
Hmm.
great to see it. It's great to witness somebody, being knocked out and being part of that moment. But at the end of the day, skills pay the bills. And so I think Devin Haney, with the style that he has and his boxing IQ, always boxing first, defense first. I think he's going to have that longevity, and I think that he has the highest potential to go into those other weight classes and do well there. Now, last night, just to remind everybody, because I know like a condo, for example, I'm not sure if he was in here last night. There's just a few people that weren't. So to remind people, I have Haney number one for that potential. I have Shakur at number two personally, and a very close two to Haney. I think they're very compatible. They're different, but they're similar in ways. And then I have Tank at number three. And it's no disrespect to Tank. I think Tank is a phenomenal fighter. Tank, unlike Shakur and Haney, has that eraser, right? He has that ability. He could be losing 10 rounds of a fight and then time a punch, and that's it. That's all she wrote. He has that type of ability. And it's similar to, I was saying last night, Deontay Wilder, very, very similar. He's not the best boxer in the heavyweight division, but he'll time a punch. And if he lands it, it's game over, right? So in boxing, you always have to take that in consideration. And it's no, like I said, it's no disrespect to Tank, but again, skills, longevity, how they approach a fight, how they prepare for a fight, their mentality. And then you got to also consider the promotional side of things. Like, can they actually get the big fights? Can they actually promote and manage and build a career path? Tank, to me, people criticize the shit out of Haney for not fighting high caliber fighters, which is fine. Last night, Frank was saying that. Frank was saying, well, when Floyd was at 130, 135, he was conquering those divisions. He beat multiple champions already, which is fair. 1,000% true. Now, it's different eras, but at the same time, it's true. But why aren't people giving Tank that same criticism? Who has Tank beat? Has Tank beat an A-caliber fighter yet? In my opinion, he hasn't. So you have to take that into consideration and say, okay, can they actually build a career path through their promotional teams, through their managers, through whatever it is to be able to get these big fights? And Devin has struggled himself as well. And that's why the topic of this live stream is, why are people ducking Devin Haney? Because I think they are. That's my opinion. That's why I have Tank and Ryan on the thumbnail, because I think they are ducking Devin. I don't think they want anything to do with Devin. I think that Ryan, coming off a great victory against Frontura, had a perfect opportunity to call out Devin. He didn't even whisper Devin Haney's name. He went straight for Tank. And I understand that they've had their little beef and whatever, and they're trying to squash it, and they've been calling each other out. And maybe he thinks it's a stylistic, matchup that makes sense for the fans because they both punch hard or whatever. But why hasn't anybody ever mentioned Devin Haney's name? Teofimo Lopez always try to avoid Devin Haney's name. Tank, the only person that I may have heard say or mention Devin Haney is maybe Shakur. Other than that, I haven't heard anything. So my opinion is they're ducking them. They don't want the smoke, and that's my opinion. So, Joseph, I just threw a whole bunch of information out there, so feel free to grasp onto any part of that information and give us your thoughts.
No, I appreciate it, brother. It's very thorough, and I appreciate the preface of the discussion, catching me up to, because admittedly I didn't get a chance to listen to last night's show, but like I said, a mutual listener of ours, Frank Bay, he really enjoyed the conversation, so he thought, well, I would benefit from chiming in on this. And yeah, DS, very respectful, brother. Thank you for being the gracious host. But let's go back to your poll. What was it called again? Because these are two different categories. And look, my forte is the business of boxing, right? I've been a working and active member of the business for the past 2 decades, right? So what was the name of your poll once again? And that's and then we'll go back to your topic of choice, right? Which is, why is everyone, quote unquote, ducking Devin Haney, right? What was the name of your poll?
Yeah. So the question in the poll is, when it's all said and done, who will have a better career?
Okay, Tank, so that should Haney, should actually provide a lot of answers, because a better career, because there are 2 different classifications of better. When you're looking at resume from like a fan's perspective, is that what you're considering in the poll, or financially, bigger star, bigger ticket seller, bigger pay-per-view commodity, bigger attraction? Are you talking in terms of that, or in terms of just X's and O's, accomplishments because they're 2 very different things? And this is a sport that the way it's run is like the music industry, right? It's not run like any other sport. In any other sport, your on-court or on-the-field accreditations and accomplishments determines your salary. Like if you have a career high stat year in any other sport, chances are you're going to get a huge raise, and you're going to be able to renegotiate your contract to yield much bigger money. Okay, it doesn't work like that in the sport of boxing. Unfortunately, that's the way it's always been, and it's because of the different weight classes. So your market value has always been determined by the real bosses of boxing, right? By your ability to sell tickets, draw ratings, sell pay-per-views. That's what determines your market value. And very few fighters actually have a grip of that, and they almost always leave that up to their promoters, advisors, and managers to figure that part of it out. So when you're talking about Devin Haney, and the reason why I'm prefacing that with your question, why is he avoided, right? Like, ducking is a fan-driven concept that really doesn't exist within the business of boxing. There is such a thing as, well, managers and advisors clearly avoiding a specific fighter because he's considered too much risk for the reward. And that, unfortunately, is where Devin Haney is, even with all 4 major world titles, having the ring, being the lineal champion, the man who beat the man who beat the man who beat the man. He's still not a huge ticket seller. He's still not a huge box office attraction. His market value isn't nearly as high as Tank Davis or Ryan Garcia, which is precisely why Ryan Garcia immediately called out. And I felt so bad for Devin. The DAZN brass and the people running the event, the Golden Boy Promotions, they actually invited Devin Haney to be a guest commentator. And I felt really bad for him because it almost seemed like no one cared. And why? Because he's not a huge box office attraction. And even though he is arguably the most accomplished, he doesn't really move the needle outside of the diehard boxing community. That's a huge problem. But I will say this, he's with the right promoter now who can put him in the best matchups after he's done with this Kambosos nonsense. I mean, come on, does anyone really want to see a rematch? No, we would love to see him against Lomachenko. We would love to see him against Tank Davis. But unfortunately, Ryan Garcia, he's going to be campaigning at 140. And I stated this when he fought in San Antonio against Emmanuel Tago. I saw him at the gym. And the day before the weigh-in with Coach Goosen, he still weighed 143 pounds. And the weight limit was 139. That's a huge problem. So he can no longer, and I called it back then, guys, I don't think he's ever going to be able to compete at 135. He's 5'10", very wide frame, just coming into his man strength, only 23 years old. Yeah, forget about it. He's not making 35. The only way he locks horns with Devin or Tank is if they move up the fighter. Now, is that a possibility? I don't know, because he is, once again, the sport is so fractured because everyone is on their own exclusive platform with their own exclusive promoter. So Devin Haney, the only chance he has of getting smoke is if he fights everyone at the top-ranked stable, which would be Teofimo Lopez at 40, George Kambosos at 35, Shakur Stevenson possibly at 35, Vasyl Lomachenko at 35. I mean, so there's a lot of great opposition there. But, yeah, he has a real problem, and hopefully the Top Rank and ESPN platform will resolve that in getting him that proper exposure that he deserves. But there's a rule in promotions, brother, Promotions 101, right? And this is why you're seeing Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis being pushed and promoted in a different way than Devin Haney. Promotions 101, number one, you protect your ticket seller. And that's what we're seeing from Mayweather Promotions and Showtime, as well as Ryan Garcia and DAZN, Golden Boy Promotions, right? And then you look at Devin Haney, okay, rule number two, if you're not a big attraction, the only way you're going to be able to increase your market value in this business is to be stuck in tough, a la Juan Manuel Marquez. Okay, he wasn't the Mexican darling that Marco Antonio Barrera was, or Eric Morales, or Salvador Sanchez, or Julio Cesar Chavez, because he didn't fight that way. In fact, he didn't start fighting that way until, well, they started sticking him in tough against guys like Joel Casamayor, against guys like Michael Katsidis. All of those really great fights, right? And it was beast after beast after beast. Manny Pacquiao, Top Rank knew, hey, we're not going to be able to raise your level of attraction unless we stick you in tough. And it worked out beautifully. He became one of the biggest stars of the sport. And so if you're looking at the road ahead and in terms of potential of most accomplished, that's going to be Devin Haney because he has no choice. While all of these other guys like Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis are going to be given the Rolly Romeros of the world, you have no choice but to stick Devin Haney in tough. He's going to be facing the Lomachenkos, the Shakur Stevensons, all of the badasses, the Teofimo Lopez's, out of necessity. because that's the only way you're going to build him into a major ticket seller. So that's it.
All right, so I appreciate the breakdown there, and it's good to have a slightly different perspective because, quite admittedly, so I don't really talk about the business of boxing because, quite frankly, it irritates the shit out of me. And that's why, like, you know, that's people know me for breaking down fights, giving fight predictions, and commentating on live fights. That's what I do. There are other channels out here that, you know, keep receipts and talk about the business and what sells and money and the mandatories and contenders and all that shit. Now, I've been around boxing enough that I have enough knowledge about it. I just prefer not to talk
Of course,
about
I
it
can tell.
because you know, you get invested. That's the part of boxing. As a fan, we all have our preference in a fighter. Like, I can say at 135, I like Devin, but it doesn't mean that I'm not a fan of Shakur or Tank or even Ryan Garcia for that matter. Ryan Garcia is a lot of times shredded here on YouTube. And rightfully so. I mean, he's the guy who tweets and goes on Instagram calling everybody out, but then he doesn't fucking fight anybody. And it's like people just get irritated at it at some point. But when I look at him fight, you know, I'm like, the kid is skilled. It's not like Ryan Garcia is absent of talent. The kid can fight.
Boy, his
He's
power
dangerous.
is thick. Yeah.
But is he annoying?
Of course.
1000%. He's annoying as shit.
Well, can I just add why on my channel I stress the business and why I encourage more fans, as terrible as it may seem and as inconvenient as it may seem, that they understand the business first. And here's why: so you understand why certain deals are made and why certain fights aren't made. Right? It's just like this topic. Why is Devin Haney currently being avoided? Well, if you understand the business, you understand exactly why. I mean, because look at Devin Haney. This is a guy he is maybe, aside from Shakur Stevenson and possibly Terrence Crawford, maybe Dimitri Bivol, he is among the best in controlling range. He's got one of the most intelligent jabs in boxing. He has some of the best footwork in boxing. In fact, you can count on one hand how many rounds he's given away, right? This is a guy who's very difficult stylistically for anybody. Okay,
you're talking about who?
Devin Haney. And so you combine all of those attributes, right, with his inability to sell tickets, and that equals an avoided fighter. Like, right. No one is going to call him out.
Let me chime in right there on that point, because you essentially segued right into what I want to talk about. I understand that at the end of the day, this is a combat sport. It's a blood sport. It's a gladiator sport. What are the casual fans going to pay for? Because the casual fans make up 70 to 80% of the revenue. Like, let's just keep it real. Our hardcore boxing fans, you know, we're 15 to 20% of the pie. We're the ardent supporters. We watch, you know, ESPN fight nights. We watch, you know, the Olympics. We watch everybody, right? But the casual fans, they're the ones who, you know, are going to pay the pay-per-view. They're the ones, I mean, not saying that hardcore boxing fans won't, but hardcore boxing fans are more picky. If you make a fight that doesn't make sense, we're like, fuck that fight. We're not going to pay for that, right? Because we know it's bullshit. But casuals, if you're a fan of Ryan Garcia, you're gonna buy whatever fight that he fights in because you just like Ryan Garcia. That's what a casual fan does. And so we have to understand that. So I get that. I get that when you look at fighters, and it's like I said, it's a blood sport, it's a gladiator sport. What do the casual fans want to see? They want to see knockouts. They want to see excitement. They want to see, you know, two guys go to war. That's why you mentioned earlier Barrera and Marquez and those guys that were fighting each other, Morales, Pacquiao. They were great for the sport because they went in there and essentially try to kill each other, right? Now, I'm a boxing fan. Do I get entertained by those fights? I would lie if I say that I'm not. But at the same time, I will always be way more intrigued by a skill set that defines the sweet science. Case in point, my favorite all-time fighter is Willie Pep.
Oh gosh,
And
yeah.
and I made the point last night, as a matter of fact, to Frank. And I said to Frank, I said, Willie Pep, right, it's a different era where the difference is back then compared to now is they had to fight. They had to fight to make a living, to pay their bills, to stay active. The pressure from the media, the pressure from the fans were way more, which is a completely different era back then.
Of course,
But
much healthier era. Yeah.
Yeah, but do you think that people were afraid of Willie Pep? No, they weren't afraid of him.
No.
They just didn't want to deal with him because
exactly. Yeah.
you can't hit the fucker, right? He's just he's
there was an
he's
old
elusive.
saying back then: you couldn't hit
Right.
Willie Pep in the ass with a handful of rice.
Right. So for me, I remember when I first got introduced to boxing when I was probably about 12 or so, and my dad, his prime was probably in the late 70s, early 80s. So he talked all the time about Leonard and Hearns and Hagler and Duran, right?
Yep.
And I used to watch these fights on ESPN Classics, and I'm like, yeah, like for me, out of all those guys I just mentioned, I like Leonard, right? I thought his hand speed and his ability, right? But I'm like,
great.
I want to find a guy that just looks amazing to me. And so I started going down through the archives, and then I came across Willie Pep, and I just fell in love with his style and his ability to be elusive, to avoid being hit, and then also hit you. I mean, at the end of the day, boxing is about I'm going to hit you and you can't hit me. It's not about knockouts. Now, Sugar Ray Robinson, he had the ability. I mean, he was a complete package. He can knock you out. He can outbox you. He can punch you. His volume. He had a hell of a chin. But Sugar Ray Robinson, as great as he was, ran into a few roadblocks, a.k.a. Jake LaMotta, a.k.a. Gene Fulmer, and a few other names. And, he's an all-time great, probably the best to ever do it. Willie Pep is different in the sense that he went on, I think it was like 80 wins in a row without taking a loss or some crazy shit like that.
Yeah. Carmen Basilio once said, that's the greatest fighter of all time is Willie Pep.
So, right. And so, I don't want to go off into the history of the sport too much, but I want to make the point in comparison to Devin Haney. For me, naturally, admittedly so, I'm always going to feel emotionally attached or like the style of boxing more than anything else. I'm a massive Deontay Wilder fan. I think he's my favorite fighter in the heavyweight division. I hope he comes back. And heavyweights are the only division where I say, okay, you don't have to be the best boxer. I just want you to bring excitement. And I think that Deontay did that. He brought excitement.
Yeah, look, whether you like him or not, Deontay, the sport of boxing is much better with Deontay in it than with him out of it. I mean, look, whether you like him or not, that's a fact.
1,000%. Because before him, it was the Klitschko era. It was the right hand and grab you, the right hand and grab you.
Ugh.
And for heavyweights, you don't want to see that shit because it's like, the whole point of a heavyweight is the fact that somebody should and usually gets knocked out unless you're at the highest level where it might go 12 rounds and it's a war like the old days between, Holyfield and Lennox Lewis and these guys where they were just so fucking good that it would just go 12 rounds. But essentially you're kind of expecting a knockout right now in the lower weight classes because of the punch volume and the amount of punches they can throw. It's more acceptable to have that if you have the style of a boxing style where you're going to grab, you're going to pot shot. Mayweather perfected that when he became Money Mayweather.
I will say this. Mayweather was an absolute animal and a beast at 30, 35, 40. In my opinion, and even though he could do it all, okay, most people who aren't familiar with his career and his ascension to greatness. And for my money, he is the greatest defensive fighter I will probably ever see in my lifetime. But he's a guy who could do it all. Like most people, unless they've seen him in the gym, they don't understand how proficient he was on the inside. But it really, really, it really befuddled me why he chose, and it's obvious why he did, but why he chose to tie up fighters exclusively on the inside, guys like Miguel Cotto, guys like Marcos Maidana, guys like Jose Luis Castillo, when he can actually fight effectively on the inside and defend himself with that shoulder roll. And once again, it was the only chance that you had in being competitive with Floyd Mayweather, right? It's like if you wanted to be competitive, you had no choice. You had to cut off that reaction time, close the distance, because he had the best reflexes in boxing, the best radar. Okay, but I'm sorry, man, I can't stand in any weight division tying your man up on the inside. It just once again calls a halt to the action. Okay, there's nothing worse that breaks the flow of action like excessive clinching on the inside. I can't stand it. Couldn't stand it then. Can't stand it now in any weight division. And once again, there's only one reason why you do it. It's to cover up any kind of deficiency that you have underneath. That's why you see Devin Haney do it. And this is the problem with him moving forward, okay? And I'm very high on Devin Haney as well. But when you look at his, power at 35, and you look at his chin at 35, there's a reason why he always ties up his opposition when they get underneath and they cross that perimeter. They cross that threshold. Well, it's to create that, to tie his man up and to depend on the referee to create that distance again. So it forces his opponents to reset. Now, when you're considering that, I'm not sure he does as well at 40 or 47 with bigger punchers. If he has a hard time getting his opponent's attention with the big right hand and left hook, if he has a hard time hurting his opponents at 35, well, he's going to have a very hard time at 40 and exceptionally at 47. That's a big red flag in my opinion.
Now, let me throw this at you. And I hear what you're saying. And I've been in a public space watching a Floyd Mayweather fight. And I was saying last night, you can argue 70 to 80% of Floyd's popularity isn't positive. 70 to 80% of the people that bought his fights were people that wanted to see him lose. And a lot of that was because they didn't like his style. They're like, man, we're sick of this guy pot shotting, grabbing. People accuse him of being a runner. And so
I would never accuse him of that. That's totally different. Yeah. I'm sorry. As you were, brother.
Yeah. For years, though, they built up Manny Pacquiao to be that guy that can alleviate the, that style and say, well, Floyd won't be able to hold on to Manny. Floyd won't be able to pot shot Manny because Manny's too quick. He's got too much foot speed. He's got too much hand
that was
speed.
Nonsense. That was nonsense.
And so, but I'm saying though.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Joseph, that's what I'm saying. For years, and I was on YouTube back then.
That's herd mentality, though, brother.
They built Manny Pacquiao to be that guy, right?
Yeah.
And I kept telling people it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter what Pacquiao does. That shit don't matter. He's a southpaw. That don't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Floyd's faced southpaws before. Who's faster, Zab Judah or Manny Pacquiao?
Yeah, I understand.
I think they're compatible. Now, foot speed, yeah, okay, maybe Manny Pacquiao has better in and out skill. But look, man, Manny Pacquiao damn near came from strawweight. He's a really small man.
He did come from strawweight.
Right? So he's a small man. So if they fought it, I think what did they fight at? Like 150 or what did they fight at? 147? I can't remember.
For 147, sir. It was a unification bout.
With Manny Pacquiao, right?
Floyd and Manny was at 147 unification. Yep.
Who's more comfortable at the weight? I never thought Manny Pacquiao was truly comfortable above 140.
No. He was in his prime at 140. Yeah.
1,000%. So Floyd is in his element. He's more comfortable at the weight. And Floyd did exactly what I told people for 5 fucking years that he was going to do. He's going to put the jab in his face.
Yeah.
And every time Manny Pacquiao tries to do his little in and out like shit and try to loop something over, he's gonna pot shot and grab. And then he's gonna release and he's gonna go to the body.
Can I address this real quick?
Gonna offset Manny Pacquiao. But let me just hold your thought just for a second.
Yes, sir.
I get what you're saying. Why people will feel like, I don't know if I want to invest my energy, my time, my money into a guy who seems that, he's not going to bring excitement. It's going to be a guy that, yeah, he can box pretty well, but I don't want to see a potentially 12-round fight where Devin Haney, every time he's in trouble, he grabs.
Yeah.
I get that. But I can easily reverse that question or, counter that, in my opinion, is that, well, every fighter that watches Devin Haney do that, you have an opportunity to try to evade that, right?
Yeah,
It's
that's
the
it. Yep.
responsibility
That's right.
of the opponent to not be held, right?
That's
so
it. Yep.
it is your responsibility to say, okay, when I'm watching tape of Devin Haney, and when a guy throws a right hand, or when he overcommits with the jab, or he steps in with the left hook, Devin Haney does this. He grabs him, or he tries to pivot, or whatever it is. You got to say, okay, put my film study in. I got to put the work, because it's not just the road work, the bag work, the mitt work. This game at this level,
Yep,
is dedication to film study and having a game plan, right? And so it's the opponent's responsibility. Kambosos didn't have a goddamn game plan.
No, he didn't.
He got his ass beat.
And he got his ass beat. Yep. He got dominated from start to finish. In fact, I was being nice in scoring 2 rounds for him. I was being nice. But look, and you're absolutely right. And very few trainers are able to actually teach that. This is the art of actually fighting underneath and fighting on the inside. It's becoming a lost art in this business. Most people teach the amateur style, mid to long range, right? And if you can only fight from mid to long range, you have no chance of beating someone like Devin Haney or Floyd Mayweather or Shakur Stevenson or Terrence Crawford, right? And this is how you combat being tied up. If you look at guys like I'll say someone who's very proficient at not being tied up. It's very difficult to tie this guy up, and that's Tank Davis. He's very fundamentally sound, and he understands when he collapses the pocket, what he starts doing is working inside, and he pulls his elbows underneath and keeps working. He doesn't give his opponents anything to grab on. And so did Andre Ward. Like, he was very good at that. Look at Roberto Duran. Look at all of those guys who are very crafty underneath. I'll even go as far as saying Bam Bam Rios, who wasn't the most defensively responsible, but he was one of the best inside fighters over the past 20 years. He would tuck in his elbows. It was very hard to tie him up.
Yeah, it was
tuck his elbows and keep working.
That's
right?
a fair point. Rios was very good at ripping his arms out.
Yep.
And continuing to punch.
Well, not giving his opponents anything to grab onto. Too often, you'll see an opponent just resign to getting tied up. Like, he'll give up. He won't keep working. He won't tuck in his elbows. He won't throw those uppercuts underneath. And that's because it's not being taught in the gym. But I will say this, going back to Diana Branches, and once again, a good evening, Diana. God bless you, sister. Great fight fan, and thank you for always supporting the show and supporting all of the YouTube boxing community. She says, wait a minute, Joseph, the art of the clinch, that's a sweet science too, bro. No, it's actually not. And well, here's why. If you look in the ABC rules of boxing, it's actually against the rules. Okay, clinching is against the rules. Now, no referee wants to be as officious. Like, no referee wants to be that officious and penalize someone for clinching too much. They don't want to be a factor in determining who wins and who loses. But if you go back throughout boxing history, it's excessive holding. That's a foul. You can take away, you can deduct points for that.
But yeah, that's the key is excessive clinching is yes, technically against the rules, but
well, the way it states in the
history,
ABC rules of boxing
clinching has happened since the dawn of time, because
that's
inevitable when fighters clash, because a lot of times clinching happens because
especially in the heavyweight division.
Yes. But over committing on a punch lands you into somebody's foundation, essentially, right? If I'm in a defensive stance and you come in and overcommit, I block. Now you're on top of me. I have 2 choices. I can punch my way out, or I can grab you.
Yep,
right?
that's it.
Now that's why referees, you see them jumping in all the time and trying to break up fighters, and some referees, every referee does it a little bit different. And I will agree 100%, Joseph. Referees have to do a better job. I had a whole discussion about this about 2 or 3 weeks ago. In my opinion, referees at the high level
Yep.
need to be a little bit younger and more athletic, and especially in the heavyweight division where you're dealing with 6'5", 250-pound monsters, and then I have a referee in there that's 5'9", 160 pounds.
Yes,
That
very good.
doesn't make
Yep.
any sense.
No, it
right?
doesn't.
And on top of that, he's 60 years old.
Yeah, that's
Okay?
terrible. Yeah.
So at the lower weight classes, yeah, you can get away with it if you're a smaller referee or a little bit older, because I understand the concept where you want experienced referees in there. I get it. But there's a large part of being athletic and being a referee is the sharpness of being able to see that, okay, you know what, this guy, he's grabbing way too much.
Yep.
Right? You got to be on top of that and make it known. And on top of that as well is when they're in the dressing room, you know, if I'm a referee, I'm going to say, look, guys, this is what I'm going to allow, and this is what I'm not going to allow.
That's right.
If I feel like you're being excessive, and whatever it may be, it can be clinching, it could be, you know, testing the belt line and you're hitting a little bit too low, you're punching off of the break, whatever it may be, I'm going to be on your ass. And I'm going to give you 2 warnings maximum. After that, I'm going to start taking points because you ain't fucking listening.
Yep.
Right? I feel like referees need to be way more strict,
Officious.
straight down the line, and make it clear what their expectations are.
That's right.
So,
and you know, you brought a very good point. Can I just touch on this? You brought up a very good point that's saying, look, when you fall into a clinch, that's very different than immediately tying someone up to overcome a deficiency that you have as a fighter. That's very different, right? And I'll tell you what Andre Ward, and I see a lot of people in the comment section bring up Andre Ward. And one thing that he did, and I remember talking with Edwin Rodriguez immediately following his fight with Andre Ward, he said he's really tricky, a lot like Roberto Duran, where he would make you think that he's going to tie you up, and then he'd crack you with a quick 1-2 and down the middle on the inside. Once again, he's using that Roberto Duran tactic by kind of eliminating one of your hands so he could get a punch off on the inside. That's very different than tying an opponent up. I like when you look at Vladimir Klitschko and in his fight against Alexander Povetkin. That is a perfect example of just disgusting, excessive mauling of your opponent to cover up his deficiency on the inside. Because that was the only chance that Alexander Povetkin actually had in winning that fight, was to try and work underneath the taller, rangier man. And it looked like a WWE fight. It was terrible. And once again, the referee, Luis Pabon, did a miserable job. And I'll go as far as like just recently, Ryan Garcia versus Javier Fortuna. The ref did a brilliant job. And did you hear him? And most elite level referees, the ones that get most of the assignments, they will tell both fighters, work out of it, guys, punch out of it, punch out of the clinch. And most of the time, both fighters will do that. And they'll step in only when they absolutely have to. And I thought the referee in charge of the action this past Saturday night did a brilliant job of that. Every time Javier Fortuna would jump inside and they would kind of get tangled up, he'd say, fight out of it, guys, fight out of it. And they did for the most part. Very seldom did you see both guys having to be separated. And I thought he did a brilliant job.
Yeah, he did. That was a pretty good refereeing job. I love to see a referee go in there and really control the fight, really maintain the standards, because then there's no room for excuses. I mean, it's cringeworthy.
Like, do you remember when Judge Mills
referees? Yes.
Do you remember when he used to slap a fighter's arm away? Hey, no holding, and he used to slap their glove.
You can hear the smack as well. He smacked the shit out of him.
And once again, that's Frank Cappuccino did the same thing. So did Arthur McCanty Sr.
Yeah. And you know, these passive referees just irritate the shit out of me. You know, back when I was in high school, I had fights and stuff. I had referees just literally just push you into the ropes. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're not listening. Because when you're in a fight, your adrenaline, you're not, you know what I'm saying? You're not aware of what the hell is going on. I mean, your corner could be screaming at the top of their lungs. It doesn't mean you fucking hear them. You're in a fight. You know
Yep.
what I'm saying? You're so fixated on what's in front of you, and you're breathing, and if you're getting a little bit fatigued, whatever it may be, there's just so much shit going on. People don't realize that
Hmm.
unless you've actually been in a fight.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
that's why referees need to assert themselves. I'll give you another quick example. It's also against the rule book to spit out your mouthpiece.
I was just going to bring that up, and Javier Fortuna did that this past Saturday night as well. And once again, it's just like when you're hurt and you're clinching. Well, getting a point deduction or getting knocked out, boy, you're gonna choose getting that point deduction every single time, right?
Right. But it's the consistency, right? It's like Keith Thurman when he got hurt against who was it? Well, he did it against Manny Pacquiao, and
Mario
he did it
Vargas.
against
Mario Vargas
yes.
getting hit to the body. Yeah.
And then they take out their mouthpiece. A
Yep.
referee should be right on top of that. That should
Yep.
never happen. And because it happens, fighters think they can get away with it.
That's right. Yep.
Right? They're going to continue to do it. As a matter of fact, when they get dropped and they're taking a knee, they spit out their mouthpiece onto the canvas. Why do they do that?
Buys them an extra 20 seconds. Yep.
Exactly.
Like
Because
the first time I ever saw that. Yep. The first time I ever saw that.
You got to wash it off. You got to put the mouthpiece back in.
Do you remember Osalino Freitas versus Diego Corrales in that 35 tournament? That was the first time I ever saw it. And Osalino Freitas did that to try and survive. He ended up getting stopped. And in the very next fight, Diego Corrales versus Jose Luis Castillo, Diego used that tactic perfectly. And he got deducted a point, but it bought him enough time to recover. And he ended up stopping Jose Luis Castillo that same round. Once again, if you're using it as a tactic of survival, more power to you. You may get deducted a point, but who cares? At least you live on to fight.
Oh, no, but that's the point, is that it's not – I'm not saying referees should disqualify you, but there has to be a standard you cannot do this, so fighters are aware that if I spit out my mouthpiece or if I'm excessively clinching, I might get deducted a point. You have to be hyper aware of that before you step through those ropes and get ready to fight. And because the majority of high-level referees are not abiding by those standards, then you're going to get, as you mentioned, excessive clinching, right? So it's a situation where I kind of get annoyed when people continue to blame the fighters. Like, man, I can't stand Devin Haney because he's always clinching. Okay, but
in charge of the contest.
The referees is the third man in the ring.
It's
his responsibility.
That's it.
To say, Devin, pull. Hey, time, Devin, go in that corner. I'm gonna warn you one more time. You can't continue to clinch like that. If you do it again, I'm gonna fucking take a point.
You know what? And it's no different than any other sport. When you're watching football, you'll see the offensive lineman hold as long as he can until the referee blows a whistle and actually calls it infraction.
Of course.
And they're gonna do it as long as they're not called on it. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
I had a sneaky little tactic when I, boxed, is where when a guy gets on the inside, I get my shoulder up really high and I shoulder barge him.
Yep.
I put my shoulder right in his face.
Kovalev does that all the time.
and of course, when I do it, my opponent looks at me like, "What the fuck?" But whatever, it's a fight. Fuck it.
Yep.
Like
it's not square dancing, brother.
If the referee doesn't say, "Hey, don't do that. If you do that again, I'm going to take a point." I'm going to continue to do it. I'm going to continue to get away with it. I mean, and there's a difference between using shoulders and little sneaky elbows like Mayweather used to do, compared to just punching somebody in the nuts. I mean, that's like, that's unacceptable. No. And on that note, referees, Russell Mora.
Oh, geez. I remember the Abner Matas, Joseph Igbeko fight. Yep.
15 low
25.
blows.
25.
Or 25, whatever it was, and no point deduction.
And you remember, he was suspended for a year after that.
I don't know. Was he suspended?
The Nevada State Athletic Commission suspended him for an entire year after that because that was egregious. And that's why they eventually had the rematch in California, not Nevada.
I mean, I don't know. It is. Egregious is.
Yeah, that was egregious.
That's a polite way to put it. I mean, you can ban him. I mean, you can say, look, you can't referee a professional fight ever. I mean, like. That's just absolutely ludicrous to allow 25 low blows. I mean, it's borderline saying,
and it's dangerous.
Are you trying to throw a fight? Like, what the fuck?
It was
You know what I mean?
dangerous too. Dangerous.
And
That's very dangerous. That's almost as bad as hitting behind the head.
it's like, for me, if I'm in a fight and I get punched in the nuts that many times and the referee's not doing anything about it, like, I'll just sit on the stool. Honest to
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
I'm like, I ain't really, hey, I'm not gonna
Hey, you
continue
know
to get
what's hard?
my nuts
I
punched
get
in.
it, man. Hey, it's hard enough to fight my opponent, but I can't fight this guy and the referee also. Yeah, I would have done the exact same thing. Honestly.
And
Yeah.
100%. And look, we can go and talk for hours about the discrepancies in boxing, judges, referees, whatever it is. At the end of the day, like, as a fighter, put all that shit to the side. As a fighter, you're training, you're doing what you have to do to be essentially a modern day gladiator. If you go back to the Roman times and gladiators those guys had a fight to the death, right?
Yep.
So they can't worry about the crowd. They can't worry about the Caesar sitting up in the stands who's going to give a thumbs up, thumbs down. They can't rely upon that because that's rolling the dice. You got to go in there and do what you need to do to fucking survive. And whatever it takes, you got to do what you got to do because it's either me or him.
Yep.
Boxing is the modern era of that gladiator sport where it's, you hopefully don't kill anybody. You have gloves on your hands.
Yep.
You're not stabbing each other with swords and spears.
Yep.
But there is that gladiator aspect of it to where I'm going to do whatever I have to do to win a fight because it's my livelihood, it's my pride, it's my ego, it's whatever, all that stuff that's involved in it. And everybody is born with a different concept of fighting. Like, you can take a person like Devin Haney because he's so athletically gifted and say, hey, I want you to emulate a Mike Tyson style. Sure, he can do it on the heavy bag. He can make it look easy because he's just athletically gifted and knows the sport of boxing. He's probably been watching boxing his whole life, right? He can probably go in there and float around like Muhammad Ali and put on a little show. But when it's all said and done, when it's time to fight, he's going to fight the way that he knows how to fight. Everybody, that's why when Customato found Tyson, he knew exactly. He took him off the streets and said, I'm going to make him and mold him to be this style because that style fits his physique. It fits his athletic ability, and that's what I'm going to do. And Tyson molded into that perfectly, that peekaboo style, quick, speed, power, and he became the youngest heavyweight champion of all time.
That's right. Yep.
And so that's what it is. Everybody is born with the style. You have fighters who you can't train him to be anything else. Like an Antonio Margarito, he's always just going to come forward and throw punches and take punches and give punches back. He's, and those type of Mexican type style fighters where they're just born and bred. It is what it is. More or less, they are fighters who are just going to come in there. They're going to come after you, and you got to either stop them or you're going to get stopped.
Yep.
And that's just the way it is. Everybody.
Well, and you used to fight, right? Different. And you used to fight also. Hey, there's my brother Frank, but yeah, you used to fight also, right? So you understand when someone walks into the gym and a trainer is supposed to assess your athletic ability. That's what always determines what style he actually teaches you. So if you're not the most athletically gifted guy in terms of reflexes, speed, just natural athletic gifts, right? You're more than likely you're going to be the guy who's going to be the effective aggressor, the guy that's taught to cut off the ring, close the distance, and fight effectively on the inside, keeping your chin tucked, throwing creative combinations to the body and head. But if you're gifted athletically like Devin Haney, Floyd Mayweather Jr., Terrence Crawford, you're going to be taught to protect yourself behind that shoulder and to try and use your legs as a foundation of your defense and to keep your opponent from mid to long range where you can see everything coming. And that's what trainers do is they try to size you up as soon as you walk in the gym and show them what you can do. And then they start to teach you the fundamentals from different skill sets, right?
Yeah, and it's just all about how you're built. It's just the way it is. When I fought, I remember the first time I got punched in the face, I thought, I don't like that shit. I ain't trying to get punched. So, what do I do to avoid that? And so
Yeah.
I developed a defensive, elusive style. I moved my feet. And did it frustrate people? It absolutely frustrated the fuck out of people because I grew up near the border of Arizona and Mexico. It was predominantly, Mexican boxers in there with, sprinkles of athletic black boxers, but more or less, there wasn't very many white kids in the gym, and they see me moving around like that. They get very fucking agitated.
Paul Spadafora, baby.
Right, but that's the way I'm built.
Hey,
like
Paul.
I ain't trying
Boy,
to
Doug
like.
Paul.
I ain't trying to like stand toe to toe.
No,
so
you were taught the foundation of your defense is going to be your feet, right? And your first line of defense is going to be your jab, right?
A coach. It's up to a coach because coaches sometimes force fighters to be in a style that they're not comfortable with.
Oh, see, that's not right at all. No.
There's a fundamental of boxing. When you first start boxing, you get in front of a mirror, you get in front of a coach. All right, let's throw a jab. This is how you throw a jab. This is how you throw a right hand. That's
Turning
all
your
fundamentals.
forearm,
the fundamental work. Step forward, step back, step to the side, pivot. All that's fundamentals. But once you get past that stage, and you start to get into sparring, a coach has to know, okay, this, if it's a kid or a young adult, this is the style, because they're going to naturally do it. They're either going to avoid punches or they're going to go towards punches.
And if they are, well,
that's
you got to teach them how to protect yourself with that high guard defense, how to actually use that jab to actually not take as much incoming. So once again, that's why they always call the jab the most important punch in boxing. It's your first line of defense and also sets the table for your entire arsenal of punches. And it's like, in the immortal words of Teddy Atlas, it's putting bugs on the windshield when you're trying to cut off that reaction time. Yeah, it's the most important punch in boxing.
And on that note, at 135,
Devin Haney has the best jab. Yep.
Okay, so you just mentioned that. You just recognized that.
Of course.
Now, I was mentioning earlier about the Instagram post that I made that's like blowing up, and the comment section is going crazy. And one guy said in there, he said, "Oh yeah, Devin Haney's jab's pretty good.
No,
if he goes up to 140 or 147,
it's one of the most intelligent in boxing.
He won't be able to keep off the bigger fighters with that jab." Which I don't agree.
No,
I don't agree, because a jab is a jab. A jab is more about speed and accuracy than it is about power. Right? Only a few fighters in history, like Larry Holmes, who had a fucking bazooka jab, who
one of
can
the greatest
actually
jabs
hurt
in
you.
history. Yep.
Yeah, who actually can hurt you with the jab. Right? I've seen him wobble guys with the jab.
Yep.
Right? So more or less, it's a range finder. It's to set up your offense, and it's also a defensive weapon. It's like a spear.
Well, yeah, and if you use it like Errol Spence, right, where you look at him fighting two prolific counterpunchers like Mikey Garcia, Danny Garcia, he won that fight with his lead hand alone. He used it intelligently and in different intervals, mixing in feints, touch jabs, hard stab jabs to the body, chest, and head. And it disrupted the timing and rhythm of his counterpunching opponent. They froze him. They didn't know when to get off. Like, you go look at those two, and that's exactly how Devin Haney uses it. He uses it very intelligently. Not only is he going to stick it in your face and he's going to control range using his feet and that jab, but if you're a counterpuncher like George Kambosos, he's going to freeze you. You're not going to know when to get off. He doesn't use it consistently where you can time it like a clock. You can slip and counter effectively. He mixes in strange intervals, and he throws it in different areas. He uses it very intelligently to control range. And I'm sorry, I don't care who he's up against, Tank, Loma, whoever.
Well, they're going
to have a problem with that Devin Haney jab as well as his footwork.
An underrated jab was a lot of guys do this. I've seen it. Their fathers, it usually comes from the father, but Oscar De La Hoya and Miguel Cotto were actually left-handed.
Yep.
So their best punch was the hook, but I mean, it was that break your nose type of jab. There's slapping jabs. There's kind of poking jabs, and then there's I'll break your face kind of jabs, which Oscar
Yep.
had because he was actually left-handed.
Yep. And you know what? He used it intelligently as well with the speed and accuracy and how he switched up using it in disjunct intervals.
Yeah.
It was impossible to counter over top of it.
And you can argue that if De La Hoya dedicated to the jab against Mayweather, he could have won that fight.
Well, the reason why he lost, though, is, let's just face it, he was a counterpuncher by trade. That was his bread and butter. He would, that's how he fought, and he was never an effective aggressor. He never was. He feasted off of other opponents coming to him, trying to fight him in the pocket, using that jab to control range and to set up those hard counters. Now, against Mayweather, boy, he had a terrible time trying to cut off the ring and close the distance against one of the best defensive fighters in the history of the sport. Yeah, like even before he stepped in the ring, I was like, okay, this is not Oscar De La Hoya's his forte. He's going to have a very hard time winning this fight.
This is why when people say that Mayweather was overrated, I'm always just like, you don't know shit about boxing.
That's
just
absolutely
right. Just like Roger Mayweather used to always say, because I'll tell you what, people always say, well, he kind of got past De La Hoya. I said, look, man, what you don't realize is this. Mayweather, was it a close fight? Yeah, sure. But Mayweather won clearly, in my opinion. But what people don't realize is that Mayweather is such a genius, and Roger as well. People don't give credit to Roger and his ability to understand and see fights. People forget as well that Roger was a champion himself.
Yep.
But what people need to understand is Floyd knew that De La Hoya is not a come forward pressure fighter, but he forced De La Hoya to push the fight.
That's right.
And that put Mayweather in his comfort zone because he can shoulder roll, throw the right hand, pot shot, tie up if he needs to, roll out of a position, lay up against the ropes, and say, "Come on, give me what you got," right? And De La Hoya with the energy and the adrenaline and everybody pushing him to win the fight, he got sucked into that, which is actually quite astonishing.
That's it.
Because you would think with his pedigree and his experience that he wouldn't get drawn into it, but he did.
No, and
but
here's
that's
why.
That is all game plan.
He was
Mayweather planned that shit. Mayweather said, "I'm gonna force him to go on the front foot." Where, to your point, De La Hoya, like you said, is comfortable at catching, shooting, counter punching, loading up with big left hooks to the body.
That's right.
And hurting his opponents in exchange, and using a big strong jab when his opponent's standing in front of him.
That's right.
So people highly underestimate the IQ of both Mayweather Jr. and Roger Mayweather.
Oh yeah.
But,
well, look. Don't forget his father also, man. Like Floyd Sr.
He's the
he's the one who started Mayweather. And it's funny when you talk. Well, I haven't talked to him in years, but last time I spoke to him, he's like, "Yeah, I started him when he was in diapers. As soon as he could walk, I started teaching him how to box." Floyd Sr. and Roger did a brilliant job in cultivating almost the perfect fighter, right? If there is such a thing. Right. Because not only did he have the fundamentals and the skills, but he also is blessed with the athletic gifts to pretty much be able to execute. And this is why it would seem that he had such a high ring IQ, because he could do anything in that ring. He could use any tactic. Like when he was losing the fight conceivably, and that's arguable, right? But when he was losing the fight against Zab Judah, okay, and he was faced with a guy who maybe had better hand speed, same type of reflexes, he was forced to take the lead, and he did it extremely well, fighting behind that high guard, working behind the jab, and he closed the distance extremely well, ended up taking over the fight, applying pressure to Zab, and he won that fight. Frustrating Zab to the point where did they get in a fight did their corners come out and get into a fight late in that fight?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That was out of frustration because Floyd took over that fight. And once again, it's like people don't understand how fundamentally sound he was and how blessed he was to be able to implement those different strategies.
Zab was notoriously known for being emotional, not being disciplined.
Yep.
And he's one loss that I just can't forgive. Well, I can't say I can't forgive him for because it's kind of harsh, but one loss that always sticks in my mind that is hard for me to give any type of pass to is when he got stopped by Amir Khan. Because I'm like,
yeah, he looked like he just laid down and was trying to blame it on the low blow.
It was sad.
Terrible.
It was sad. And I thought going into that fight that Zab would stop Amir. But at that time I thought, Zab's done. When I saw that, I said that Zab's done. He doesn't have the heart for it anymore.
He pretty much was. Yeah.
And it's sad because he's one of the most talented guys coming up. And
he was one of the original chin checkers in Brooklyn. Yeah.
He was Max Kellerman's love child.
Well, that's because Max Kellerman's from New York. That's why. And he saw his ascension through the amateurs, and he was predicted to be one of the greats. I mean, he was such a deep amateur standout. He was. I mean, not only did he have the hand speed, a lot like Floyd, the reflexes, the fundamentals, the skill set, but he also had really good crack in his shot. And everyone thought he was going to dominate once he turned pro. And then he ran into a stone cold killer like Kostya Tszyu at 140 pounds.
And clipped him.
If they move fighters like they did, if they move Zab like they move fighters now, he would have been undefeated till he was like 32 years old. So
yeah, and once again, that's once again it's terrible the way how fractured the sport is. Back in the day, we had one or two platforms that everyone recognized to be the biggest platforms for mainstream boxing. And so you had network executives, guys like Lou DiBella, guys like Ken Hirschman, guys like Ross Greenberg, who would put their foot down and say, okay, look, Bob, I know you don't like Don King, but you're going to have to work together, and you're going to have to get us Tito Trinidad versus Oscar De La Hoya. And if you don't, well, then find another platform to put your prospect showcases on. Okay, because we're not going to give you TV dates unless you give us this fight. That's something that's missing from today's sport because it's so fractured. Never have I ever seen 3 or 4 dominant platforms in boxing.
Hey,
you have Fox, Showtime, you have DAZN, you've got ESPN, and they don't have to and promoters have now devised a new strategy where they try to monopolize weight classes because they're not interested in any kind of interpromotional events. And it's sad. And these network executives need to grow some balls and demand that we see these fights. Otherwise, promoters aren't going to do it.
And I think, King of Kings, just real quick, and then I'll throw it back to you. And some of it is on the fighters as well, in my opinion. I know that the fighters can only do and say so much, but this Twitter war and Instagram bullshit. I'm a huge advocate of fighters showing up to fights of their potential opponents and calling them out. There's nobody stopping these fighters from doing that.
No.
You're absolutely fighters need to show up and be like, let's fucking get it on. Let's pressure our promoters.
I agree with you.
And these networks to make these fights instead of just like, oh, let me make a tweet.
Joe, was this a true story? Let me just add to that, Divine. That Fernando Vargas would throw eggs at Oscar at a parade?
Yep. Yep.
Like
and once again, they
bro,
were
it used to be crazy back in the day.
Yep.
Like Larry Holmes fighting in a parking lot. Mike Tyson being antagonized, or he's antagonizing.
Yeah,
whoever.
Mean Joe Green.
I mean, bro, like people. It was crazy back in the 80s and 90s. These guys like meeting each other in the streets, talking shit. I mean, people sit there and laugh about Shannon Briggs running around talking about "Let's go, champ," but he's from that era. Shannon Briggs is from that era where they just I want to fight that guy. So where the fuck is he? Oh, he's staying at that hotel? I'm going to that hotel then. I'm going to fucking call him out, And I like that shit because it's like that's actually what forces the hand to make these fights.
You're doing like the Ryan Mr.
Garcia. T. Well, and once
Ryan Garcia wins, and then he makes a tweet calling out Tank. It's like, did you go to Tank's last fight against Rolly and then go into the ring and be like, let's get it on, bitch? No, you didn't.
Well, here's what creates that onus, right? And if that kind of activity creates that demand from the real bosses of boxing, that's ultimately what's going to force the hand of promoters and the networks. But it has to be the fans. They have to be behind that, and they have to start beating the drum and demanding those fights.
Right. And hold that point. I'm going to highlight this real quick by Note Zay. He said Boo Boo be doing that. And that's a good point, because when he went to the press conference of Canelo and said, Canelo, like, when can we fight? And Canelo, in my opinion, completely disrespected him and said, you ain't shit. All you want is a payday. That's where the whole meme came out. You want payday. You want payday.
Yep.
And it's like, then you go on and fight Caleb Plant, which, no disrespect to Caleb Plant. I like Caleb Plant. But in my opinion, Caleb Plant and Boo Boo Andre, they're compatible, right? So why you're okay to fight Canelo or Caleb? Because Caleb, you know, he had the IBF, right? So he had
the
a scrap.
IBF, yeah.
So I want to go after him, but you know, so I get what Note Zay is saying. It's like some fighters do try to do it, but then when they do it, you get somebody like Canelo, who's a massive fan favorite. Everybody loves Canelo.
Yeah.
And so when Canelo says, man, fuck you, you just want a payday, everyone sides with Canelo. Therefore, people look at Boo Boo and say, man, get the fuck out of the way. You ain't ready for Canelo. That is the problem.
Well,
that is the problem.
Let me get before Joe grabs the mic, but I mentioned this to Joe because he mentioned HBO, and I'm looking at how HBO used to run things. And before I really understood boxing, but you know, I was like, why is Felix fighting Hugo Pineda, and why is Oscar fighting this bum Obakar? But now I see the reasoning. I could accept those fights because it was getting us ready for. They fought on back-to-back weekends. That's my point. Yep. So it got us ready for the big showdown.
That's right. There was always that strategy and contingency. Yep.
I want to let Kings jump in here because he's been waiting.
Oh, hey, thanks, bro. Hey, just real quick, man. Speaking of you talking about historically how the division was ran, if boxing was ran how it was now, somebody like Ike Cortez, speaking of jabs, a very dangerous opponent, they would definitely categorize him as low risk, high risk, low reward. You would never even see a guy like that. But those are some of the best fights we used to get. And speaking of, just because he brought up the Boo Boo situation, that was cool and all, but I think you got two different issues. The fan base now that you're dealing with the soccer generation right now. You're thinking of the participation world, the troll, boxing fans right now. It's not like our day where do something like that to you. We scrapping right now, and I mean the way he approached him, when Canelo started doing all that stuff. I mean, I told somebody this on another show. I said, man, Boo Boo should have threw a cup of piss at him or something. Just something so disrespectful that he couldn't ignore them. You know what I'm saying? Like oh my God, you gotta fight this dude.
Hey, Bernard threw the Puerto Rican flag down. Like it happened.
Exactly. Well, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. You know why we got the Wilder Fury trilogy to begin with? Because they met in the ring.
Yep.
Y'all remember that?
Yep.
They met in the ring and they talked.
That was at the Barclays in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah. Right. And then everybody automatically was like, we got to see this fight.
Yep.
We got to see this fight. And it didn't matter what Bob Arum or any of these motherfuckers said. They knew they had to make that fight. And at that time, Fury was coming, essentially coming out of fucking rehab, basically. And it wasn't necessarily the most easiest fight to make because people didn't know if Fury can actually come back and deal with somebody like Wilder.
Yeah.
But because of that shit talking and that drama, people are like, well, we got no choice now. Fighters aren't doing that anymore. They used to do it all the time. Even a mouthpiece like fucking Paulo Malignaggi, as annoying as he was, would constantly be fucking calling fighters out, and people are like, they get to a point where like, all right, Paulie, like, all right, fuck it, I'll fight you, so you just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, get away from my side piece.
I remember that. Yeah, he actually told me all of that story, by the way. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to go into that, but I thought it was hilarious. But Paulie's a little nuts. Like, if you ever have a one-on-one conversation with him when he's not behind the mic, he doesn't change. He's always that extroverted, and he always has those bug eyes, and he always looks like he's crazy. And that's not an act, man.
I have my opinions of Paulie. I've spoken about it a few times. You know, there's some things that, I mean, stylistically, you know, he was one of those pure boxers. The guy didn't have much power, so he relied on his ability to box, and that's cool and everything. I always support that. Some people fucking hated it, but you know, there were times where, you know, I think who did he fight? Did he fight Baby Bull Diaz or something like that? And
in Houston,
he didn't get the decision.
Yeah,
he got really upset, and he like called out all the judges and all that shit. And so for me, it's like I respect bravery sometimes, even though it may seem like even Adrian Broner sometimes. Adrian Broner, even just recently, right, where he's calling out everybody in PBC. I respect sometimes the bravery to be able to speak up and try to defend yourself, which some fighters don't do at all. They just get walked all over. So I appreciate that bravery, but you gotta be smart about it.
That's right.
If you come out yelling and screaming and cussing people out, people are like, well, this guy's just out of control. And see, that's the narrative with Adrian Broner, is that he's disrespectful, he's out of control. Now I see people commenting all over the place that he's got feminine tendencies because he's acting like a bitch and all this other crazy shit, right? And geez. It's like it goes from Adrian Broner's got a mouthpiece. He's talking shit. He's speaking up for himself too. Man, this guy's just a bitch. He just doesn't, you know what I mean? He's showing like he doesn't really want to be there. He's complaining about everything. And so that's what happens. So you can get what you want, but you gotta have intellect behind it. And I agree 1,000%. Imagine let me say this too. One of the main reasons why the Caleb Plant Canelo fight went from I'll watch it because Canelo's in it to, oh shit, I gotta watch it now, is when Caleb fucking tried to smack the shit out of him at a press conference. So those things help. And I don't, you know, people say it was staged, it was planned. I don't know, but I'm glad it happened, because even for me as a boxing fan, and I was one of those guys, oh man, maybe Plant will give him trouble, man, because Plant's a pure boxer. We've seen Canelo struggle with pure boxers. And so when Plant did that, then it's like, okay, well, at least I know we got a fight on our hands, right? Yeah. So that's what we need more of in the sport. And even Keith Thurman, don't duck me, son. Don't duck me, son, and all that shit. Like that stuff, ironically, does work, and we're seeing less and less of it. Yeah, and we're starting to see that split where it's like everything is dependent on, number one, money. How much am I going to get paid? And dependent on, I'm just going to let my promoter handle it. Yep. And then now, like Bud and Spence, we've been talking about this it's been several years if you want to get technical. But as of late, it's damn near 1 year now where they've been in discussion and we still haven't got a signed and still delivered deal. Yep. And a lot of it is bravado, ego, pride. How much money am I going to get? Where's the venue going to be? Well, I'm the A side. No, you're not A side. I'm A side. And they're just waiting for their promoters to handle all of it. And here we are as boxing fans being starved of a all-time great fight.
Well, in this case, with Crawford Spence, I can tell you that Steven Espinosa is trying to put his foot down and force both parties. Because you have to understand, in this situation, Terrence Crawford and Brian McIntyre, they're representing themselves. They don't have a promoter to be able to negotiate for them. And for months now, they've been very far apart. But I can tell you what I know. The last time I spoke with, someone from Showtime, is that, and this was not this past Friday, but the Friday before, they were really far apart, where Terrence Crawford was demanding $15 million and Showtime, they were at 8.5. They were really far apart. But then this past Friday, we got a very positive tweet from Mike Coppinger, who stated that they've crossed all those obstacles. A fight's going to be made. A deal's going to be made. They've crossed all the major obstacles. So I'm assuming that they made happy media. They found a happy medium. And you have to, everyone should thank Steven Espinosa for holding both parties' feet to the fire to actually come to a happy medium. Not because once again, Al Heyman going into this wanted Terrence Crawford to sign an advisory deal for his next 3 fights.
Mm-hmm.
And Showtime's like, you know what? Screw that. We just want a one-off. This is going to be the best fight of our fall schedule. We're interested in this one fight. Okay, don't try to hinder this. Don't try to stall these negotiations any further. And then also trying to convince Terrence Crawford that this isn't a $30 million fight because of the piracy issue, because the pay-per-view sales are terrible. That's not reasonable. So if this fight does go off, well, credit to Steven Espinosa for actually acting like Lou DiBella in the past, Ken Hirschman in the past, and holding both parties accountable and forcing them to make this fight.
Well, yeah, and somebody has to step up just because simply there's just way too much money to be lost, too much criticism that is waiting at the front door for everybody involved if the fight it doesn't happen. And it's one of the major reasons why Pacquiao Mayweather eventually happened, because I think both sides realize that if we don't make this shit happen, it will haunt us for the rest of our lives, both for legacy, for fighters, and for promoters. It's a massive stain on the sport. And their boxing is constantly being compared to the UFC, and how UFC is able to make these big fights and have champions fight each other, and boxing can't do that. You got Dana White always criticizing boxing as well. And so, it's getting harder and harder to defend the sport that we love, which is boxing. And when you have situations where Bud and Spence still haven't fought, it's like, because, it's like, how do you defend that other than, oh, well, it takes time, it's money, it's this, it's that. And so for me, I'm always a huge advocate of legacy. I know it's easier for me to say, and it's a different era, it's a different generation. Everything's about hustle and money and how much money am I going to get out of this, that, and whatever. But that's what makes you special as being a combat sports person, boxing, MMA, whatever it is the fact that not only can you make, at the end of the day, if you make 5 million or 10 million, you're making a shitload of money. The difference is that you also have the accolades. When you walk down the street, that's the champ.
Yeah, you used to actually mean something in healthier areas, or healthier
separate
areas.
Yourself from everybody.
Yeah,
even basketball players, football players. That's the fucking world champion right there.
Well, and that actually used to mean something in healthier eras. Nowadays, it's so watered down in the 4-belt era. What the hell is that, dude? Honestly, the sanctioned organizations, I'm a huge advocate of basically zoning them out. Their ranking systems are atrocious, and they're completely corrupt. And honestly, just pay attention to the ring. Pay attention to their ranking system, because everyone else is just in it for the money, to tax these hardworking fighters, and to, well, once again, it's completely fraudulent if you understand how the rankings are devised. And a story just came out the other day, kind of exposing where Greg Cohen is being sued, and he basically blew the whistle on how the WBA devises the ranking system. And it's something I've known for decades. It basically, if you have a good relationship, like right now, in the WBA, Al Heyman has a very good relationship with Gilberto Mendoza. Just like Emmanuel Stewart back in the day had a really good relationship with Paco from the WBO. And he said, watch this. I'm going to get my guy ranked next month to get him some bigger opportunities and some TV dates. And he calls up Paco and says, hey, I've got this guy, really gifted. He's my next Tommy Hearns. He competes at 154 pounds. His name is Tony Superbad Harrison, but we need him ranked to get these big opportunities and get him these big fights. Can you actually do that for us? Paco said, you know what, Emmanuel, you've always been very good to us with Vladimir and your entire stable of fighters. So, yes, no problem. The very next month, he was ranked number 7. Okay, it's all bullshit. And so if you want the sport going back to a much healthier time, well, do away with all the sanctioned organizations. It waters down. Like, you've got guys in San Antonio, Texas, where I'm from. And no offense, I love these guys. Mario Varrios, Josh Franco. that are considered world champions. And it's like, bullshit, dude. Who do you beat to become a world champion? Okay, being a world champion in boxing used to mean something. It used to be special. Who did they beat to become world champion? Jesse James Leha, if you look at another San Antonio world champion, won the WBC title at featherweight by beating Hall of Fame badass Azuma Nelson. That was special. You had to beat someone to become a champion. That's not the case nowadays.
Right. And I'll just say this, and then we'll do a quick U-turn and get back on topic. Imagine Muhammad Ali coming back from Africa after he beat George Foreman, walking down the street. And if you were a kid and you saw Muhammad Ali after that, it was like seeing Zeus. It was like seeing Jesus.
Oh yeah.
Right. This guy is a god. This guy is a hero. He's a fucking hero. Right. And that luster, that glamour has started to slowly die off, where now you got champions where like people hate him. They're like, we hate the fact that this person's a champion. People hated the fact that Mayweather was undefeated and a multiple-time division champion, and people like see him down the street like, oh God, that's Mayweather. Fuck that guy. And it's like weird how it's shifted. And in the to be fair, heavyweights have always kind of been the pinnacle of the sport. But still, I mean, I'm pretty sure when Ray Leonard walked the streets, they're like, there's the champ. You know, people respected him. People liked him. He had a nice story, whatever the case is. So the shift of boxing has really begun. And it's sad to see, because for me, it's frustrating. And I think it's, you know, for people that are born in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s, you grow up with your dads, your uncles, your cousins, and you're all watching these great champions. And so we're from that era where now it's different. Now we have to, unfortunately, I think we're forced to accept that it's just different now. And so when we get into the conversations of why isn't Haney fighting Tank? Why isn't Haney fighting Shakur? Why isn't Haney fighting Lomachenko? Like, why are these fights not happening? Why is Haney being forced to go all the way to fucking Australia? And not just that, but then be forced into a rematch clause even if he wins. Like, why is this weird shit happening in boxing? And why are we waiting 2 or 3 years to get a unified matchup or an undisputed matchup when clearly there, you know, 2 fighters in the same weight class are available, but yet they don't fight? And it's just something that we're being, quite frankly, it's being shoved down our throats, and we don't really have much of a choice. The only thing we can do is use these microphones and continue to speak about it, and at least let the fighters know what we feel. Because believe it or not, and I say this all the time, fighters watch YouTube.
Yeah, of course. Here's the problem, though, with that, DS. Here's the problem. And I can tell you with great certainty, and from what I know, networks, promoters, they really don't give a shit what diehard boxing community thinks any longer. And I'll tell you why. It is because statistics have proven that the great majority of them are no longer financially supporting the sport. They're streaming everything illegally. This is the biggest problem within the business of boxing. And this is, once again, why I always stress the business, whether you realize it or whether you like it or not. It's important that fans understand this. Unless you're financially supporting the sport any longer, they really don't give a shit what you think. And that's the reality. This is why immediately Ryan Garcia called out Tank Davis. And he said, you know what? I really don't give a shit about the belts anymore. They don't mean a damn thing. I'd rather go for the big mainstream attraction that Tank Davis is, and I'd rather make my money. Who gives a shit about the belts? And that's exactly why they're saying that. And honestly, promoters and networks feel the exact same way.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I gotta
that
say
might
this.
be.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, go ahead.
I gotta say this. That's not why he said that.
That's exactly why he said
this
that.
Narrative came up. That narrative came up from him and a couple of these lame ass fighters, is because now they're finally in a position where the dudes that have a belt or something, because now they're about to try to devalue the belt, and it's not on some like moral stuff. It's just because the dudes who have the belts they can't beat. If Devin Haney, if okay, let's say if the undisputed champion was still George Kambosos, I promise you that they would be trying to fight him for them belts.
Well, it's two reasons, King of Kings. And once again, and I appreciate that. And you're thinking like a fan, though, brother. Fighters, promoters, networks, they don't think like this. And this is why I always strongly urge fans to learn more about the business. One, he's no longer interested in competing at 135. He knows it's not going to be for the belts if he fights Devin Haney. He's no longer capable of making that weight division. And two, Devin Haney doesn't sell tickets. That's not a huge money fight. As accomplished as he is, it's still not as big of a money fight as if he were to fight Lomachenko or Devin Haney. If you were to fight Teofimo Lopez, that's still a bigger money fight than Devin Haney. Devin Haney, as good as he is, he couldn't sell out my living room on a Saturday night. He's not a big mainstream attraction. He can't sell tickets. That's the reality, guys.
And why is that, in your opinion?
You know what, brother? I used to do publicist work for a lot of fighters, and it's neither here nor there. Either fans want to like you or they don't. That's it. I mean, I used to just burn me, man. And he's going to go unnamed, but it was a former WBA champion. And we got him some great ink. We got him some exposure and crickets. And he had a great personality. We even got him a commentary gig on several different platforms, and still nothing. Either the fans choose to like you or they don't. Look at Canelo Alvarez. Before he started speaking English, he had the personality of a stick, but fans gravitated towards him. They love him. Okay, it doesn't matter. You can do your client, your fighter can touch on every major marketing platform, and it doesn't matter. You can do all the right things, and if fans choose not to like you, well, whose fault is it? No one's. It just either happens or it doesn't. And that's why I'm saying it's a sad reality of any entertainment industry. Either you're an actor or a musician. There's no rhyme or reason why fans gravitate towards one fighter and not another. That's just the way it is.
I think I would slightly disagree, because I think that styles do make a difference. Unfortunately, I think that, like what we mentioned earlier, where it is a modern gladiator sport, people want to be energized, they want to be intrigued, they want to be entertained. Hence the famous quote by Russell Crowe: "Are you not entertained?"
Well, of course, and
that part of it is still.
That's
there,
usually
right?
the status quo. Then how do you explain Floyd Mayweather becoming the biggest star of the sport? Like, it wasn't even the close second. Floyd did not fight in an aesthetically pleasing style to most mainstream casual sports fans.
Frank and I discussed this last night, and I'll reiterate that Floyd, you can't compare him to someone like Devin Haney in this regard, because Floyd had a nice entrance into the professional ranks, right? With his being attached to the Mayweather name, being an Olympian. Everybody knew that he was robbed in the Olympics. He should have won a gold, and he got a bronze. Yep. So everybody knew who he was. So his first 10 fights, and granted, he was explosive. He was knocking guys out. He was fast as fuck. He was amazing to watch, but still, he had already that name, just like any other, But
if you look at his early career, though, brother.
Type. No, but let me finish my point. Is that he had a little bit of a different path than what Devin Haney had, and he did have a personality as well that grabbed attention. And it's just Devin Haney he's 23 years old. Okay. Uh-huh. He's still trying to figure out the business side of boxing and how to impose himself. And that's why you see him in a heated argument with Teofimo Lopez, and they're going at each other. Their dads are involved. That's why you see him say the things that he says during the press conference with Kambosos, where, he's trying to be a little bit more aggressive. But earlier in Devin's career, he was just a humble young kid with skill, and he did the right things, and he kept his head down, just trying to get fights, and kept his record undefeated. But now, the last couple of years, you can see Devin start to be a little bit more aggressive. a little bit more outspoken. And I think he's realized that he needs to do that to be able to be recognized and appreciated. Now,
That's not going to help him, with all due respect. Just having an understanding of the business, right? The only thing that's going to help him, and I stated this in the very outset of the show, okay, if a guy's not a big ticket seller, the only thing you can do to raise his level of attraction, he has no choice. You have to stick him in tough. You look at Floyd's career. He was the B-side fighting Arturo Gatti. Even when he left Top Rank, even under the Top Rank machine, right? Still didn't help him any. He still wasn't a huge ticket seller. He never appeared in a greater than 4,000 or 5,000 seater. Okay. Wasn't a huge ticket seller. And he left Top Rank because, well, he believed that he should have been. Okay. So even fighting against Arturo Gatti, he was the B-side. He made B-side money and he beat the brakes off of him. Okay. Going on to his next pay-per-view, fighting Zab Judah. That pay-per-view still only sold about 300,000 pay-per-views. Okay. And that was under main events, right? Or was it Goose and Tudor? Or Gary Shaw. I'm not sure. But once again, that pay-per-view, he didn't actually start becoming a huge commodity until he got that. And you look at the Carlos Baldemir pay-per-view, he only did 250,000. Okay, he didn't cross that threshold until, boy, he struck gold doing Mayweather, De La Hoya Mayweather 24/7. He got the De La Hoya fight, and he beat De La Hoya. After that, just opened up the cash register. It was very fortuitous. But once again, it's like it's almost like a crapshoot. And so Devin Haney, he's with the right promoter right now who's got the right level of opposition for him. But make no mistake, guys, Devin Haney has been the product of receiving inflated purses, because I'm seeing in the comment section, oh, but he's made a lot of money. Once again, despite being a non-ticket seller, a non-ratings draw, okay, he was the product of receiving inflated purses. What was the first thing he said when he made the deal with Kambosos? He said, no, I'm not getting the money that I feel I deserve. Brother, you're still getting well above your market value. And keep in mind, he sold less than 4,000 or about 4,000 seats at the MGM Grand against Jojo Diaz. And Jojo Diaz actually sold almost 2,000 of those tickets. He's not a big ticket seller. So the only chance that he has in becoming a big attraction, and once again, he's in the right place because Bruce Trampler and Brad Goodman are two of the best matchmakers in boxing. And if they can cultivate your level of attraction, okay, they're the guys for the job. So what's going to happen is he's going to have to fight successively. Guys like Lomachenko, guys like Teofimo Lopez, guys like Shakur Stevenson. He's going to have to fight beast after beast after beast after beast. That's the only way it's going to happen.
So let's shift gears a little bit then. Then my question is that Tank, right? Tank is a bigger attraction. Would you agree? Compared to Devin
he is.
Haney?
Yes.
Okay. He's probably made more money than Devin.
Yep.
But yet he still hasn't had any big fights.
You're absolutely right. And once again, they're using a completely different promotional approach, and I can't stand it. But it goes back to, and once again, guys, the sport of boxing has always been business first. But back in healthier eras, when it was still a mainstream pastime in America, they could run it more like a sport because you could get huge ticket sales. You could get big live gates on even non-televised events. You can't do that anymore. More like, when is the last time you've seen a major promoter schedule an off-TV event? That never happens anymore. They're too reliant on the licensing fee from the networks, and too reliant on the big casino site fees. And they've already made their money. They don't give a shit about selling tickets. They don't even give a shit about promoting events half the time. And it's because it's become a fringe pastime in this country. Okay, when it used to be much easier to treat it as a sport back in the day when it was a much healthier era. Now, this is why you see guys only fighting twice or maybe even one time a year, because we're completely reliant now on TV dates exclusively to make this money. And it's a damn shame.
It is a shame. I think that I guess I'm getting your point that you're saying that unfortunately, like you said, it's a crapshoot. It's rolling the dice in this business. Maybe you get lucky. Maybe there's something about you that might attract the the casual fan base, because like you said, that's what it really is. The hardcore boxing fans are going to be picky. We're not going to buy certain fights if we don't think it's worth it. And these networks and promoters, they know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
They see the numbers, and they're saying, well, as long as we can keep the attraction of the casual boxing fan, that's how we're all going to get paid. So they continue to, I mean, the fact that they're selling Canelo versus Triple G, the third fight, in my opinion, is an atrocity. That's just my opinion. I think that there's a plenty amount of other bigger fights that Canelo could have taken that would have challenged him. And to go and fight a 40-year-old man after you fought him twice already is laughable. And that's just my opinion. But people are going to fucking buy it. And that's sad.
Yeah, well, think about who cultivated the last, and you could say the last two big attractions in North America, right? Who cultivated those guys is HBO. Okay, that was back when casual and mainstream audiences knew where to find the best fighters fighting the best. Where are they supposed to find these big fights nowadays? On ESPN, home of Friday Night Fights, DAZN. Dude, last time I was a ring announcer at an event, okay? I said, hey, are you looking forward to Canelo versus Bivol? It's going to be on DAZN. Okay, and these were mainstream and casual sports fans supporting these local fighters. They said, what's DAZN? That's a big problem, guys.
Yeah, huge.
So since I mean, you could argue maybe Tank, but that's once again on Showtime, one of the big two back in the day. But since HBO ducked out of the business, have we seen another big star cultivated on any other platform? And guys, I'm talking about someone who can actually cross the $1 million mark on pay-per-view. We haven't seen one since Canelo. Say what you want about Spence. Say what you want about Tank. They can't even come close. Like you look at Terrence Crawford. This guy should be a mainstream star. In healthier eras during the 80s, he would be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He would be a total badass. Everyone would know who Terrence Crawford was. But nowadays, because boxing has turned into a fringe pastime in this country, it's now become a crapshoot. Your percentages and your odds of becoming a huge star has dwindled down to slim and none.
Well, I think I got a quick question, and I'll make a point after I say it. Is it easier nowadays as a boxer to promote themselves than it was 30 years ago?
I'm sorry. Repeat that, please. I'm sorry, King of Kings.
Oh, is it easier for a fighter to promote themselves now, their image or whatever, than it was 30 years ago?
Yes and no. Yes and no. And here's where yes. Yeah, of course. I mean, and it's free. YouTube is free. Instagram is free. Twitter is free. Facebook is free. But there's so many different outlets that it gets lost in the shuffle. You remember back in the day when Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns was the biggest fight in the entire world at one time. Okay, it was the biggest sporting event of that year because there were only 3 or maybe 4 big outlets that people tuned into for their entertainment. There was no such thing as satellite or 600 channels on cable. Okay, there was no such thing as social media. If you wanted your news, you had to tune into ABC, CBS, and NBC.
Let me ask the panel.
Fox wasn't even a thing yet.
When was the last time you went to a bar to watch a fight or had a fight party, or if you even went to a movie theater to watch a fight?
Yeah, it's been a while. I think the last one was Mayweather Mosley.
That's the last time you actually had a fight party?
No, I went to a bar. I went to like a big bar for that.
So even though you can promote your fighters and your brand for free, okay, it gets lost in the shovel. It's the same thing with the music industry. That's why you see all these old geezers in the music industry still touring, even though at age 60, 70, and 80, right? Because they're still recognized mainstream commodities. All these new bands are playing in clubs. They're not being played on mainstream radio. What the hell is mainstream radio anyway? Everyone listens to satellite. Everyone listens to Spotify, Pandora, and it's the same thing with boxing. Yes, it's free. You can promote it on several different outlets, but it's not as big. That's why you'll never see another Muhammad Ali, guys, because he was recognizable to everybody on a wide world of sports. ABC, everyone tuned into ABC.
Well, let's talk about this. And as a topic that sometimes ruffles feathers, I think it still needs to be brought up because I think it's relevant. And some things never change, in my opinion. And I'm going to get to what I'm saying. When I look at the poll that I've had in the chat now for the past, we've been going almost 2 hours, is Haney. The question was, when it's all said and done, who will have a better career? Haney's still at the top, 48%. And Shakur is second with 28%. Now, clearly, based off the poll, people recognize Haney's skill and they think he has the best potential. But yet, we're still getting a little bit of pushback here and there. We brought Joseph on. He's saying, well, the business of boxing, this, that, and whatever. So he may not, eclipse that potential. He might be known as a pretty good fighter, but he's never going to reach the pinnacle because the business side of things. Cool. So let me throw this out there. From my point of view, when I look at boxing, and I've seen this 100 times, and in this division in particular, you have 2 white fighters. You have Lomachenko and you have Kambosos. Now, what's ironic to me is Lomachenko, right, has only how many professional fights? 14, 15, whatever the hell it is, right? And he's got 2 losses, right? And not only one of those losses were against Teofimo, who Kambosos beat, ironically enough. But yet people still clamor for Lomachenko. People still love Lomachenko. They think, we had a guy in here in the chat earlier today. Lomachenko is the most skilled fighter in the division. And so you see that. Now when Kambosos beat Teofimo, everybody started, clamoring for Kambosos. Wow, yeah, he's the new undisputed champ. Yeah, he's going to beat Haney. And there's a lot of people that still was riding that wave of saying, wow, look at what Kambosos did at Teofimo. He can beat Haney too. Right. So a guy like Lomachenko, and as skilled as I think that he is, and I agree that he is, okay, but I find it ironic how a guy who, as distinguished as he was as an amateur, he still only has a handful of professional fights, and he's got 2 losses on his record. Where Haney, being undefeated, now currently the undisputed champ, hate it or love it, that's a fact. And it's funny because the belts that he took, the belts that Haney currently has, at one point in time, Lomachenko had them. Right? Yep. So why is it that now Lomachenko, even now, if Lomachenko comes back and fights whoever it is, it's going to sell. But Haney, we're having a conversation right now. Well, he just can't sell. He's not an attraction. He's not a star. So I guess the question is, does race play a role? And
Hell
how
no.
the media looks into it?
Hell no. No, not at all. And it hasn't been that way since in this country for decades, man. I mean, come on, dude. Deontay Wilder, Floyd Mayweather Jr. Okay, these guys are 2 big draws. And once again, Deontay Wilder, because he wasn't being promoted properly early in his career, he was still being kept at arm's length. But when they put together that brilliant promotion, Fox and ESPN, to promote the rematch of Tyson Fury, right? Man, he became a big star. Both guys really increased their level of attraction. And that took on, with the promotion, the spots in the Super Bowl, the spots in the bowl games. That was one of the best promotions I've seen over the past 20 years. And it was brilliant, and both guys became big mainstream commodities since then. Okay, so it has nothing to do with race. Okay, because I'm sorry, and once again, there's no rhyme or reason why fans either choose to like you or they don't. There is no rhyme or reason because Floyd Mayweather, he's very black last time I checked. And he's probably the most lucrative money-making fighter of all time. Sugar Ray Leonard was also a media darling. Okay, they love that guy. Marvin Hagler was as well. Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield.
And let me chime in. And trust me, it's not a card that I want to pull out of the deck. But in my opinion, boxing has been a race-driven sport, and continues to be so, maybe not on the same magnitude as it was in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But I have plenty of examples, or at least things to look at and consider, is that, I mean, right now, currently, who's the biggest moneymaker in the sport? Is Canelo.
Currently, it depends on where you live. In North America, it's Canelo Alvarez. Okay, in the UK, it's Anthony Joshua.
Okay, so let's keep it in America then, because obviously UK boxing hasn't had the same type of impact in regards to races as America has. Right.
Look,
I mean, we can all agree that in the history of the sport, right? In the history of the sport, what I'm trying to get at is I'm not saying undoubtedly it's only because of race, but I'm simply putting out food for thought. You know, Fury was, you know, a guy who wasn't really well known, but he was a big guy, damn near 7 foot, or that's what they told us anyway. Who can box and move? Tyson Fury.
Oh yeah.
And who can box and move, and they kind of compared him sometimes to Muhammad Ali because he was big and he can move and he outboxed Klitschko, and they promoted this idea of, you know, of a big white heavyweight who can move and box, and it can emulate a style similar to Muhammad Ali. I'm not making this up. That's what it was being put out there, right?
Well, yeah, it's a promoter doing his job. Promoter Bob Arum doing his job. Absolutely.
Sure. But then again, when he faced off against Deontay, there was that, you know, it was America, UK, it was, you know, and you go back to the face off before the first fight when they actually faced off. I don't remember if it was 24/7 or whatever the fuck it was, but they got into that room and they
all access,
all access, and they were talking shit. And then they were talking about, like, you know, Deontay brought up the fact, well, you don't know where I'm coming from. I come from
to
nothing.
This day,
and like, and Tyson was saying, yeah, but I'm a gypsy. I don't come from anything either. So you had that automatically. You had two guys going back and forth saying, well, you know, you don't know where the fuck I'm coming from. And they had, so it was promoted an idea where, okay, which one is more valid? Which idea is more valid? A white dude that's a gypsy from the UK, or an African American who comes from the South, who doesn't really have a lot of experience in boxing, started boxing late, become a champion. Which one's more valid? Which background is more valid? And so the fans had to choose, right? So that's the point.
You just hit the nail right on the head. You hit the nail right on the head by saying the fans. Okay, it's not like a team sport. Look, if you like the Cowboys, if you like the Giants, if you like the Rams, whomever, okay, you're going to gravitate. You're going to root for the Rams, no matter who the hell is wearing that helmet. Okay, as long as you've got those colors on your back, they're going to root for you. I'm a Cowboy fan. I don't give a shit what ethnicity you are. As long as you're wearing that star on the side of your helmet, I'm going to root for you. Okay? Boxing has never had that luxury. Okay, so if you want to blame someone for that kind of tribal attraction, it's the fans. Okay, there's no coincidence that Mexicanos, Hispanic fans, will gravitate towards Mexican fighters. That's no coincidence. Okay, you're also venue, locale, where you're from. If you're from South Texas, okay, like if you're from East LA, okay, Mexicanos are gonna and so people from California, they're gonna be attracted to you. They're gonna be your fans. So it's the fans in large part that's guilty of that. Look, the promoters, I can tell you just from working with promoters, they see only one color. Green. If you can sell tickets, if you can make money, they don't give a shit what your nationality is, what your ethnicity is. They're going to sell you. They're going to promote you.
I'll give you that benefit of the doubt that that's common sense, that promoters are in it for business, they're in it for money. I'll give you that. But to give you another example, and I always refer back to this, right? And rightfully so. I'm a Deontay Wilder fan, so of course there's going to be a little bit of an emotional attachment with a guy who, with the story that he has, come up short against a trilogy against Tyson Fury, but still is being basically his character is being insulted every single day on social media. I literally just saw a photo on Instagram of him being next to, I believe it was Chisora, because
And who is this?
they were talking about it, right?
Who is
Deontay
this?
Wilder.
Okay, Deontay Wilder.
Deontay Wilder, right? So Deontay Wilder came up short in a trilogy against Tyson Fury, right? And since then, he's still continuing to be criticized, chastised, made fun of. His characters are being attacked all over social media till this day. And I'm not talking about.
Do you think
I'm not talking about random, like, low key, profiles on social media. I'm talking about guys who have hundreds of thousands of followers.
Okay, so what do you think that's attributed to?
Let me finish. They're making photos of Deontay Wilder standing next to Chisora because that, there was rumors that fight might happen.
Yep.
And they got Chisora holding a belt looking fresh. And then they got Deontay Wilder bloodied, busted up, looking like, after the fight he had against Fury, obviously. So it's this perception that Wilder ain't shit. Wilder was always a bum. Wilder is a guy that we can't respect, because why in the fuck would you put him next to Chisora in a photo to promote a potential fight and having Wilder look like that, right? And this is a profile that has hundreds of thousands of followers. So in my mind, automatically, right? Because my mind is I'm with you, Joe. I don't see color. Like, I've been an athlete my entire life. The best player plays.
Yep, that's it.
The best fighter wins.
That's it.
Right? That's the way it is, right? You underestimate no man. But unfortunately, I'm surrounded by people in my life that do look at color in a certain way. So my question is, what if it was Tyson Fury that came up short in the trilogy? And would they plaster his photo all over social media next to Chisora, next to Anthony Joshua,
hold on, brother.
looking busted up? No, it's a fair question to ask.
Yeah, of course. Let me ask you, DS. Now, I can see that you're attributing this, or maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to assume. So I'm going to ask you flat out. Are you attributing this theory to his race or ethnicity or his color? Is that what you're doing?
I'm attributing the fact that race does play a role.
Okay, so
hold on. It may not be a major role, but it is relevant.
Okay, so that's in my opinion, okay, with all due respect, sir, that's lazy journalism. Because once again, you have to factor in, does his maybe negative perception by a huge percentage of the boxing community, does it have everything to do with him being a sore loser? Okay, and basically bringing up Glovegate and basically crying sour grapes, accusing this guy of cheating when it wasn't merited. Do you think maybe it has something to do with that?
Now, I'm glad you brought it up. Now, we're talking about the general perception of casual boxing fans. I have to make that clear. Okay, I have to make that clear. Not everybody is going to think outside the box. That's just life. Most people, they ride a wave, they jump on the train, and so that's the reality, right? Now, if you were to ask me personally, did I, as a Deontay Wilder fan, when the allegations first came about, you really have only two ways to look at it. And I agree. There are a fan and there's a straight up, like, I'm in love with this fighter.
Yep.
And this fighter can never do anything wrong, no matter what. Right. And we see that with Canelo all the time. Right. So I would consider myself an ardent supporter of Wilder, but I'm not arrogant or ignorant enough to say that any man or woman, for that matter, is perfect or is exempt of doing something that is, quite frankly, stupid or unwarranted. Right. But you only have two ways to look at that situation. Either one, you can say, well, that's stupid. Why would he bring that up? Of course, Fury didn't cheat without any evidence. And then you can take that train and say, yeah, fuck that. That's ridiculous. Or two, you can say, this is interesting. I wonder why he's saying the things that he's saying. is it only because he lost and he can't take the loss?
Yep.
Or is there something behind it? See,
Nope.
I'm an investigative type person.
Yep.
If somebody tells me, and I'm just speaking for myself, Joe, if somebody says, hey, Divine, I woke up this morning and I swear to God, bro, I woke up, I looked down at the foot of my bed and there's a fucking dragon in there flying around, right? I'm the type of person that says, for real? Damn, bro, like, I want to see it, right? I'm not the type of person that says, man, you're fucking crazy. Are you on crack or something? Like, what are you talking about, a dragon in your room? You're fucking crazy. I'm an investigative person. I'm an agnostic person in pretty much everything in life, right? So when Deontay brought those allegations up, I started like, okay, so what do I do naturally? And everybody that is in the chat right now, for the most part, has been around since that time of the allegations and shit like that. So what did I do? I did a film study of the second fight. And from an unbiased point of view, we looked at step by step about how the fight went and all these different things. And we picked out certain things that looked a little bit odd, something that we don't see in boxing quite often. Is it cheating? I'm not calling it that. What I'm calling it is that's why there's speculation when things don't go the way they normally go. But for me, it was, to be honest with you, I never really talked too much about the glove shit, like the floppy glove and all that stuff. I didn't spend too much time with that because to me, it's too much hearsay. There's too much, it's, photos being manipulated potentially. I don't even get into that. But what I did pay attention to was, and a lot of people get upset when I say this, and I've had heated arguments on YouTube about it, is Mark Breland's actions. To me, that was a little bit strange, okay? Because, and it's a conversation of the classic conversation of, okay, when does a trainer step up to the ring apron and stop a fight when their fighter's in trouble? Okay, I've been in the boxing world for a long time, and I completely understand a trainer wanting to save their fighter. Right? That's essentially your job. It is your responsibility.
Yep.
But there's also such a thing of the gladiator sport. There's also such a thing of being a heavyweight championship bout. There's also such a thing of we all recognize, family, trainers, whoever's involved in this fighter's corner, that they are stepping into that ring and any one punch could potentially be life-threatening, right? So you automatically accept, especially at that level, where it's like, my husband, my brother, my uncle, whatever it is a warrior. We accept the fact that he is willing to, quote unquote, go out on his shield. We expect that from him. So from what I have been told is that Wilder made it abundantly clear that no matter what, don't stop the fight. And so obviously that's like, any fighter can say that, right? So as a trainer, you're like, nah, you take it with a grain of salt, perhaps, right? But it's not only the fact of Breland stopping the fight, it's also how he stopped it. Is throwing a towel from a seated position. And not only that, never warned Wilder in between rounds that, yo, if you don't show me something, I'm going to fucking stop it.
Okay. Divine, can I step in for a second, please?
Sure.
Okay. First of all, Kenny Bayless did not stop that fight. He threw in the towel. The only one who has authority to stop the fight at any time is the third man of the ring, Kenny Bayless. That's it. That's in the rules. That's the rule, brother. Okay?
Sure.
He didn't have to stop it. Hold on. In boxing history,
I got to challenge you on that.
I'm going to bring up an example where it's happened before. Do you remember Miguel Cotto versus Yuri Foreman for the WBA or the WBA Junior Middleweight Championship? And it was in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, the
right?
leg.
And Yuri had a knee injury. Yeah.
That's right. And someone threw in a towel. Arthur McCanty Jr. just saw a towel come in the ring. He said, hey, wait a minute. He goes, who threw in this towel? Was it you? Okay, do you want to continue, Yuri? And Yuri said, yes, I want to fight on. understanding that it's his title up for grabs. He was the incumbent champion. So what did he do? He said, you know what? Everyone clear the ring. We're going to actually call time in when the towel was thrown in, and I called timeout. Only the referee in charge has the authority to stop the fight. Not your corner, not a fan. Okay? That's it. Only the referee has the authority to do it. And it happened last year in England when it was two junior welters, Ermias Ponce versus the British fighter, where his corner threw in the towel because his dad was a trainer. And the fighter, okay, gosh, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he stated that, no, I want to continue. Referee let him continue. And it received a lot of scrutiny because it was his dad throwing in the towel. But he said, no, fighter wants to continue. He made the count. He passed the ring sobriety test. I'm going to let it continue. And once again, you look it up, the guy who won the fight, the Argentine, Ermias Ponce, right? Well, what I'm saying is Kenny Bayless didn't stop the fight. Okay, once again, I hate talking about these things, really, because you're taking a fan's perspective, and anyone who spent a considerable amount of time in this business understands protocol for a WBC heavyweight fight. It's virtually impossible since the Louis Ritson incident. That changed everything. The Panama Lewis incident, that changed everything. Now there's much greater precautionary protocol. They even, when you send the gloves, all right, when the glove manufacturer even sends the gloves to the State Athletic Commission to be inspected and still in the packaging, they will even cut open the glove to see what's in. They'll take a random sample of your glove, they'll cut it open, and they'll look to see what's in it. Make sure it's up to spec.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the gloves. It's not like Fury's a
your biggest concern was the water tampering?
No, my concern is the suspicion. It looks suspicious on how the fight was stopped. That's just my opinion.
Well, you have to blame Kenny Bayless then. There's a lot of.
Sure, I think Kenny Bayless is a fucking lackluster referee. I can't stand.
He's a terrible ref. He's a terrible ref. He's lazy, and he's too old now to do the job. He's already 74,
something like that. I mean, he's terrible. But I think I understand what you're saying. Yes, obviously, referee is the ultimate authority. But I mean, come on. If we were really going to put a percentile on it, if a towel comes in, what would you say? 95% of the time, the referee's going to wave it off. You know, I mean, it's not like it's a 50-50 chance here or even a 60-40 chance. I mean, it's a situation where literally 9 times out of 10, if a towel comes flying in, the referee's going to call it, especially if the fighter's been down a few times and he looks damaged and shit like that, right?
That's true.
So sure. I mean, technically speaking, you can blame it on Kenny Bayless. And people have said to me in the past, well, even if Mark Breland didn't throw in the towel, Kenny would have stopped it eventually anyways. Well, that might be true, but you got to look at it on Deontay Wilder's perspective. If the referee stops it, that's part of the fight game.
Yep.
If you can't do something to show the referee that you're still in the fight, you know, as a fighter, as a championship fighter, that the referee may step in at any point, right? It happens all the fucking time. But when your corner does it, when your corner is the one who initiated the stoppage, that is demoralizing, because in your mind you're thinking, you know better than that. And like I said, it's not like you warned me in between rounds. Mark Breland is a champion himself. It's not like the fucking guy doesn't understand how it is to be in a tough fight. You would have that high standard of, hey, like, I see you taking damage. Like, I know how you're feeling right now. If you don't fucking show me something, I'm going to throw in the towel. Trainers do that all the time.
Yep, that's right.
And that never happens. So is it shocking to me that when Kenny Bayless stepped in and waved his hands, that Wilder's looking around like, yo, did you just stop it? And the referee's like, no, your corner just threw in the towel. I didn't stop. Well, I stopped it technically, but I stopped it because your corner wants to stop it. And referees do that all the time. When the towel comes in, they make the decision to call it. And when the fighter's like, what the fuck? They point at the corner. Well, talk to your corner. They threw in the towel. They didn't want you to fight anymore, and I decided to stop it. But it's ultimately, I'm on their behalf. I stopped it. So referees I mean, how many referees really want to stand there and explain themselves, especially when a towel comes in? They don't. They say, go talk to your corner. They threw in the fucking towel.
No. Most referees, once again, when the towel comes in, okay, most of the time they will be looking right in the action, especially if that fighter who the towel was thrown in for, right, is getting his ass whooped. They've got the best seat in the house. I mean, this is what they look for. They look for the eyes. They look for the legs. In my opinion, yeah, I felt that Deontay Wilder should have been actually given the benefit of the doubt, but he was taking a solid ass whooping. Okay, and once again, hold on. Do you think maybe Mark Breland threw in the towel knowing that they had a 3-fight deal set up? Saying, hey, man, live to fight another day. You've got a rematch coming up, brother. Do you think maybe that entered his mind? Because I tell you this, I've speaking with James Buddy McGirt, right? Hall of Fame trainer and fighter. I asked him this because he was under fire like 10, 15 years ago for pulling the plug too early and calling a halt to the bout when his fighters wanted to fight on, right? And you know this. And I remember asking him, hey, man, what do you have to say about the criticism that you received in calling a halt to the bout too quickly? And he said, look, brother, he said, I'd much rather be too quick on the trigger than a minute too late. So I'll choose to pull the plug on the fight earlier because I do never, ever want to risk being a second too late. You can't take that back. And so once again, these trainers, you can't fault them. If they care about their fighters, you can't fault them for being a little too quick on the draw.
It's not about stopping it per se.
So what are we actually talking about? The
process of which you go about stopping it is my complaint. Because, I've just started my daughter in boxing, right? She's 10. I'm her father. My first and foremost responsibility is to protect her. As much as I want to see her be a champion and succeed, and she's of my blood, and I know that if she's in a fight, she's going to fight to the death, right? Because that's who her dad is. So I have to be the person to protect her from herself. And Deontay has not proven once but twice in the second and third fight that he's willing to die. Deontay Wilder is willing to die in the ring, right? And do I think that Mark Breland knew this? That he knew that, okay, I know my fighter, Deontay Wilder. I know that he's willing to die in there, so I'm going to save him. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning the process of which you take. And it's very important. Even with my own daughter, let's say in the future, if it ever comes to it, it's not like Deontay was doing well, and then all of a sudden he got clipped, and then you don't feel the need to warn him that you're going to stop the fight. He was basically, from the end of round 1, was starting to get hit with flush shots. And at no point do you say, you're not looking good. Like, if you don't do something, you're going to force me to make a decision. As a matter of fact, Joe, if you go back, and I encourage you to do it, go back and watch that second fight, the full fight. No, not the highlights.
Yeah, the full fight.
And go and look in between the rounds. Not only did Mark Breland not send any warning, but he also hardly gave any instructions.
Yeah.
It was just a weird, exchange between a trainer and a fighter for the whole fight. Yeah. And I don't know if they had an argument before the fight. I don't know if Wilder had a fight with his wife or some shit before the fight, and everyone was just like, oh, just leave Deontay alone. He's not in a good mood. I don't know. But none of that shouldn't fucking matter. When that fight starts, you got to communicate with your fighter. Like, all that other drama bullshit.
Well, and once again, that's why he was let go subsequently, right?
Yes.
That's why he was let go.
And a lot of people got extremely upset that Wilder let him go. So
well,
then it's like,
no. A lot of people didn't get upset about that. That's common in boxing. What
I
a
can
lot
tell
of people,
you a lot of channels on YouTube that got upset.
well, what a lot of people got upset was the accusations of Mark Breland. And once again, in my opinion, if people have somewhat outspoken animosity, okay, towards Deontay Wilder, it has very little to, maybe a tiny percentage of that his adversaries have anything to do with race. Most of it has to do with character. Most of it has to do with those absurd accusations of not only accusing Tyson Fury with glove tampering, which is absolute dog shit, but also accusing your head trainer, Mark Breland, one of the more honorable guys within the sport of boxing, of tampering with your water. Okay, that's it. That's the only reason why he has a ton of detractors.
And
I can guarantee you that's the only reason.
And trust me, I've heard like people's explanations, their narratives on why they're upset at Wilder. Like I've heard it all. So I understand. And I don't want any fighter, even though Wilder is a favorite fighter of mine. I don't want any fighter to have to resort to bringing up allegations like that, right? I want every fighter, as much as I love them, to say I lost, right? But once again, I'd say it's a strange situation, and I have to put myself in somebody else's shoes, and I try to do that as much as I possibly can, as a man, as a person. Is that, and I am gonna assume here, just based off of intuition and life experience, that based off of the demeanor between Mark and Deontay during that second fight with zero to little communication, that there had to have been already some type of dispute leading into that fight.
Agreed.
There was already an issue.
There seemed to be some kind of dissension in camp, right? Yeah.
Right. So if you're Deontay and you're thinking, and then you're trying to fight until you can't stand anymore, and then Mark is the one who you have been having a dispute with, ends up throwing in the towel. If that was me, I'm going to take it personally too, because I'm going to think, because we're not on good terms.
Yep.
Right. So it's like you have it out for me. Like, what the fuck? So
but come on, man. I mean, look, Mark Breland had no animosity going into that. Now, maybe he felt maybe he wasn't being treated or respected, but Mark Breland's a professional, man.
I'm not saying he isn't, but I'm saying
I'm just saying.
We don't know. We don't know what was happening behind the scenes. We literally don't know. Mark may have felt that he wasn't being appreciated enough. Deontay might have been feeling like Mark Breland's not being grateful enough. Oh, who fucking knows, right? But at the end of the day, it's clear that they were not on good terms. No. Go back and watch the second fight.
No. It's pretty obvious.
So when he throws in the towel, automatically, as a man who has obviously an abundance amount of pride like Deontay does, and rightfully so, being a champion, you're like, what the fuck? So this is the separation, though, right? Is that he, instead of saying, well, I think he did it just because he's being disgruntled and just being a fucking hater and he wanted to, fuck me over.
Look,
right?
Guys, Mark is a professional.
Let me finish.
It's nonsense. He's a professional, man, with all due respect. Look, Mark Breland is a professional, my friend.
Listen, you got to think from Deontay Wilder's perspective. You're thinking of it as a as a boxing analyst, and you're looking on the perspective of Mark Breland.
That doesn't make it rational, brother. I understand, but it's just like, with all these accusations, it's not coming from a rational place. Look, the truth of the matter is, Deontay Wilder, he believed all of the promotion leading up to the event. He is an all-time great, one of the hardest punchers in the history of the sport, unbeatable. Tyson Fury was damn lucky that he shouldn't have even gotten up from that final punch in the 12th round. Oh, and he was the product of he believed all of that. He truly believed that this guy couldn't beat him, much less beat him up in the center of the ring. He bought into all that shit. A lot of very confident fighters, just like Teofimo Lopez, they can't fathom. They can't even understand how it's possible when they lose. Look how Teofimo Lopez reacted when he finally lost to George Kambosos, a guy who is, man, he's not even on the same level as Vasily Lomachenko.
Well,
and I dominated Vasily Lomachenko, right? It's like, wait a minute, how does this happen? How did he sound afterwards? Oh, dude, the fix is in. Oh, man, I can't believe Eddie Hernandez would. Look, some of these guys who are brimming with confidence, and you have to be, and you know this, you have to be this way if you want to have any kind of success in the ring. And when you are at that level, like an alpha male, you truly believe that no one can best you in the ring. Guess what? It's a hard pill to swallow when you do. He's not the first guy, and he definitely won't be the last to come up with these crazy irrational excuses. Okay, that's just the reality of this man.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, yeah, there's and but also on that note, the allegations of water being spiked, things being placed
nonsense.
in gloves. Well, it may be nonsense, but it's allegations that have been brought up through the history of the sport. So it's, you know, it's not like it's unheard of, right? Fighters have and fighters have been caught, by the way, by putting things in their gloves. It's not like it's never happened.
Yeah, like I said, with the Luis Resto incident.
Margarito had bricks in his gloves when he fought Cotto, and he could have ended Cotto's career.
Once again, that was never proven. Unfortunately, though, he's got a very strong case with the entire Sugar Shane Mosley incident. Like, he's got a very strong case. But I can tell you this, the Luis Rizzo incident, yeah, it's like that changed everything in pre-fight protocol.
Well, we know, too, that when Muhammad Ali fought Sonny Liston, something went into Muhammad Ali's eyes and he couldn't see.
Yeah.
So I mean, things have happened throughout the sport where a fighter tries to get an advantage. Nowadays, it's PEDs, it's steroids, it's fucking whatever it is, and which I will never condone, right? Because basically, when you are on steroids or PEDs, you become even more of a dangerous weapon than what you already are. And so this idea of fighters not cheating and things like that. I mean, I mentioned it many times before. When Sugar Shane Mosley got caught for PEDs, or I think it was EPOs, he had to go before a court and plead.
Yeah, it was the Balco scandal. Yeah, and
yeah, I mean, he was like begging.
Victor Conti ended up going to jail. Yeah,
to not like have. I think the one fight that they were considering on taking away from him was the De La Hoya fight, which is a resume legacy defining fight for him.
Yep.
And they were saying, well, you were on EPOs when you fought De La Hoya. Like, you know, you shouldn't be granted that victory. Like, so he had to go before a court and plead and beg for them not to take away these fights and ban him from the sport.
Yep.
Right. So then, you know, and then you get situations where certain fighters have popped on. I mean, even Canelo got popped, and then he was banned. What was it, 6 months or something like that?
Yeah, we're talking about a totally different situation, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion from just being around the sport. If you want to succeed and if you want to participate and compete at the elite level in boxing today, or in any sport today, yeah, you've got to be taking some kind of performance enhancing drug. It's the darkest it's not even a secret anymore. Like, just ask anybody. Ask anybody. Everyone's doing it now, brother. And these, it's funny. I was talking to Ronnie Shields about this several weeks ago. And he said, you know what's funny? None of us ever, and he was talking about when he was a former prize fighter. He said, you know what? None of us ever had to worry about our fighters or us popping dirty until strength and conditioning coaches infiltrated our sport. Started selling us on the idea that we needed supplements to try and increase our strength, endurance, conditioning. That's when all of a sudden all of us started popping up dirty. We had to worry about that.
Does it make it okay though?
No, it doesn't. And I'll say this though. To be honest with you, if the fighters don't give a shit and they're all doing it, why the hell should the fans care? It's not us taking punishment in the ring.
Yeah.
If the fans are okay with it, hey, man, may the best juice win.
Well, I think with the PED thing, I mean, it's evolved, and mostly it's for recovery. it's not really to get muscles anymore or out strength. It's recovery. Your body breaks down after a workout. You need to recover. You just can recover faster. Come in the
No,
next
there's
day.
so many other ways of doing that. And once
Mhm.
again, they do all of that with the hyperbaric chamber, all of that, right? So my point is, though, like I know, and they're going to go on, remain unnamed, right? But I know strength and conditioning coaches that fucking laugh at testing protocol. They're always ahead of it. Have you noticed that banned substance on the banned substance list? There's always new drugs every year appearing on it. Why do you think that is? Because they're way ahead of the drug testing protocol, even Veda.
Well, and that's why I was an advocate and supporter of Floyd Mayweather, promoting the Olympic random blood and urine testing. And I thought that would have been a nice segue to try to make an even playing field. It didn't last very long, obviously.
No, dude. And once again, all of these guys are way ahead of that.
And it makes you wonder, too, on that note, Joe, is that there's a very high possibility that Manny Pacquiao was on some shit. Because according to you, everybody's on it. Everybody was using it. We saw Manny's speed as he got older.
Yep.
We saw that he maintained speed and power and all these different things. And as soon as Floyd said, I want to test randomly, Manny said, oh, I'm scared of needles.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
So it kind of makes Floyd in a way look like, well, maybe he knew some shit or he knew enough.
Well, yeah, of course. How do you think he knew it? Look, everyone's been on that shit. Sergio Martinez, okay, on that shit. That's why he went from 1 year not being able to punch himself out of a paper bag to not getting everyone the fuck out.
Yeah, and then they tear ligaments. That's the biggest,
Yeah, look at Vitaly Klitschko. You tore your rotator cuff, tearing your knee.
Yeah,
James Toney. Look, man, everyone does this shit. Floyd also. Once again, you look at the IV scandal, right? Oh, I'm just taking an exception to rehydrate myself. Bullshit, dude. Did Floyd lose any of his speed and power when he went up to 47? Fuck no. Dude, everyone's doing this shit. And once again, if the fighters don't care, why should the fans? Okay, it's not our heads being targeted.
I understand that athletes or combat fighters have been trying to figure out a way since the dawn of time to have an advantage. I'm sure the Roman gladiators were fucking taking fucking opium or some shit before a fight.
But yeah, the baseball players in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, Mets were doing coke in the locker room.
Yeah,
in the dugout.
So I understand that it's been around and it's nothing new. I think that some people, if you don't know your history, you think it's a new thing, but it's not. There was probably some plant or herb. I mean, there's legends of when the Americans were in the Philippines in the early 1900s that they would shoot the Filipinos and they wouldn't die or they wouldn't go down because they were on some fucking herb and they would just not feel pain.
Yeah.
And that's why they developed. That's literally why I believe they developed the 44 Magnum.
But I think to hammer Joe's
during
point
that era
is that the last two biggest sports stars, Tiger Woods and Lance Armstrong. I mean, if the best are doing it, and I was surprised before, I really got into sports like Tiger Woods. He plays golf. What do you need to be on stuff for?
Right. So I think my stance has always been this. Boxing, and you can speak it for MMA as well, but I don't particularly watch MMA that much. But boxing, it's just different. You're punching people in the face.
Yep.
Well, watch I'm sorry. But the MMA, the Chanel Sonnen, he has his little thing, and he says, "Dude, if you're not cheating, I don't know what you're doing."
Look here, guys. Let me just And once again, this is a very odd take, but look, just being around the gym, right? Being around the sport for the past 20 years at a professional level, right? In part of this business, I can honestly tell you, it almost seems that people being bigger, stronger, with a greater capacity of knocking someone out with one clean shot, you could argue that this sport has actually gotten safer than taking a bludgeoning over 12, 15 rounds. It's that steady accumulated effort is what causes all the damage. If you're knocking
Could be.
someone out with one shot, that's no problem. You come back, wiser, stronger. But when the real wear and tear happens, when you take that Margarito Miguel Cotto punishing over 8, 9, 10 rounds, that accumulated effort, that's where the real damage occurs. That's why, if you must know, that's why sanctioning organizations as well as state athletic commissions are huge advocates of women only fighting 2-minute rounds. Because one, they have a very strong threshold of pain. And two, they're not going to be able to load up and knock your ass out with one shot. It's more of that accumulated damage. And that's the most dangerous kind of effects that you can have, the wear and tear you can have in boxing.
Joseph, I understand the comparison. So my question would be then, so would you speculate? Because, I mean, if you've been taking drug tests throughout your career and you've never tested positive,
yep,
the idea would be that you're a clean fighter. So, and I understand you're saying
that's
everybody's doing it.
That's the only assumption that you can come to unless you know for sure. Yep.
Right. So let me ask you a personal opinion then.
Okay.
Do you think Deontay Wilder has always been a clean fighter considering his power?
No. Look, this is my personal opinion, okay? And this just, once again, guys, my personal opinion. What do you agree? And I'm not advocating it, saying it's okay or not. Okay, but this sport, when you look in terms of pay, has always been a sport of the haves and the have-nots. Unless you're competing at the elite level, you're making drips and drabs compared to the top earners. This sport is, and if you want to compete at the elite level, you pretty much have no choice. Dude, go ask Chris Algieri. Go ask Paulie Malignaggi. Go ask anyone who's retired. Go ask Antonio Tarver. Oh, wait a minute. He's been popped. Go ask Roy Jones. Oh, wait a minute. He's been popped. Just ask Evander Holy. Okay, wait a minute. He's been popped. Okay? Everyone does it to compete at the elite level, guys. That's my opinion. I'm a stern believer in that because I know too many people in this fucking business. Pardon my French.
So Wilder has figured out a way to...
No, not him. Whoever's doing his strength and conditioning. Yeah.
Okay, so...
They know exactly...
Well, obviously, you can blame the strength and conditioning coach because they're the one providing the meals, the supplements, whatever. But I'm saying at the end of the day, who gets blamed? The fighter gets blamed.
Of course,
if they pop, right?
Once
because
again,
you're responsible for what you put in your body.
Of course.
And so what I'm saying is his strength... So what you're saying is that his strength and conditioning coach has figured out a way to provide
most of them have
whatever performance drug and not get popped.
Have you noticed, brother, even though like these fights, you'll see them actually, they're talking about it. Oh, this fight looks like it's going to happen. And it's a big fight, right? And then you'll see that it doesn't get announced and contracts signed until about 2 months before the event. Do you remember back in the day when we were young, DS? Back when fights were announced 4 or 5 months before the fight to have that time to promote the event, big time event. Mm-hmm. Okay, well now, fights aren't even announced until maybe 2 months or even less than that. Okay, that's by design. So now you can start tapering off when drug testing starts.
And just to add to that, I mean, we have to say it's normalized because if you look at Victor Conte, it's normal. I mean, people are working with a known cheater. How is a guy who just, was busted, you just get to come back and you work with them?
Look, guys, and once again, it's not just me, in my opinion. And once again, Ronnie Shields believes this. He said, look, guys, why did all of a sudden our fighters start coming up positive once we actually allowed these strength and conditioning coaches to infiltrate our sport after they'd been ostracized from other competitions? Remy Korkami, he was ostracized from the Russian sprinting team, right?
Yeah. And
okay, and once again, so this is what Ronnie said, and this is the last I'm going to say about it. He said, you know what? You can argue that strength and conditioning coaches are indeed the drug pushers of boxing.
I'll say this. We both have stated our opinions clearly, and that's why it's an opinion. For me, I think that Deontay is an anomaly. I think he is a naturally strong person.
And he very well may.
And he's a small heavyweight, like, let's be honest. And he's, he was winning by knockout at 212 pounds.
Yes.
And it's not like everybody, it's well known that he's got a massive upper body. He doesn't pack a lot of muscle in his legs. His power comes from his torque, his length, and his ability to also, I have to say this because a lot of people just say he throws wild punches, which is not fucking true.
We started
Hold
late
on.
too.
Divine, can I answer something real quick in the chat? Because I'm getting a bunch of shit right here. Okay. Someone's saying, like, if you can't say his name, call him. Look. I'm saying DS, not Diaz. I'm calling Divine DS for Divine Sense, guys. I'm not being disrespectful. Okay. He's allowing me on his platform. He's being a gracious host. And I have nothing but respect throughout this entire conversation, guys.
Yeah, a lot of people call me DS, by the way. So yeah, he's not saying Diaz, it's DS. Some people call me Sense, some people call me Divine. So want to make that clear. But what I wanted to say, Joseph, is that if you say that, in your opinion, Deontay's more than likely, you're not saying for certain, but more than likely, based off of what you have heard, that Wilder has probably taken something, he just hasn't got caught. Well, then I would say then that Tyson Fury, was on something for him to be able to get up after being knocked down in the 12th round of the first fight, knocking his head off the canvas. And
you have a point. You have a point because most of the time, and you know this from being a former fighter, what determines your durability and your ability to recover in the sport is what? You being in great shape, right?
Yes. You
being at the peak of your condition. And Tyson Fury in that first fight obviously wasn't, was he?
Right. And not only that, I mean,
so you could have a point.
If you go back, and that's my thing, is like, whatever discussion we have or disagreement, I want it to be on a even playing field. And that's my approach anytime I have a conversation, and hopefully we can either agree or we can agree to disagree amicably. Now, even in the third fight, when Wilder landed that punch after, he was clearly losing the fight and shocked the whole world.
Beautiful straight 1-2 down the middle.
Right.
Beautiful.
And Fury's whole body literally sent shockwaves from head to toe.
Beautiful shot. Yep.
And he gets up once again. And it's just like an extreme rarity to see a guy. Yep. I mean, we've seen Wilder literally knock people through the ropes.
Yeah.
We've seen him put people to sleep and they don't wake up for 5 minutes.
Yeah, just ask the Spilka.
Right? Or Dominic Brazil. I mean, Dominic Brazil hasn't fought since he got knocked out.
Well, he did, but he got his ass whooped by
you're right.
Big Swede. What's his name? The Big Swede.
Yeah, I forgot about him. But no. I mean, he hasn't been the same. Let's just say that.
No, and he's not going to be.
And so, like I said, man, I mean, if we're gonna go tick for tack, then that's what I say. I mean, Fury,
no.
I think there's suspicion there,
could be.
And even Fury himself have said recently that a big part of the reason why I've considered retirement is that I actually feared that I took brain damage against Wilder in those fights.
That's it. And
look, so it's like, okay, well, you got punched hard as fuck. And is there heart and determination behind getting up off the canvas? Absolutely. But there's also something that sends a little extra juice to your legs, because we see it all the time with fighters. You see it all the time with fighters where they're conscious, they're looking at the referee, they're trying to get up, but they don't got no legs.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's what happens when you get chin checked. Is that your nervous system takes time to send signals back to your feet. And so when you get hit like that, the way he got hit against Wilder, it's like there's just no, I mean, you can tell that he was still awake, but you can tell like at that moment, he's not getting up. There's no fucking way. And he ended up getting up. And then he got dropped again 10 seconds later. And so, I guess you could talk about this all day long about this type of shit, but at the end of the day, Wilder has been a professional for quite some time. He's been a champion. He defended his title 10 times. And I think that at the end of the day, when it's all said and done on paper, he's a clean fighter because he's never popped. Not every fighter can say that. right? Canelo, Luis Ortiz,
That's true.
even Fury himself.
That's right.
So Wilder, technically speaking, is a clean fighter because he has yet to prove otherwise.
That's right. And until he does, you have to assume that he's a clean fighter. And once again, I would never come out and call him out. Okay, I would never write an article about it. And I wouldn't denounce his reputation publicly. If you ask my opinion though, okay, just from what I know and what I've seen in this business, everyone at the elite level is doing it. That's why they're competing at the elite level. That's just my opinion. And for what it's worth, really doesn't mean anything. And once again, hey man, if someone actually has the capacity to get past the drug protocol, the stringent beta testing, hey, more power to you, brother. And once again, if everyone's doing it, may the best juice win. Because why should we mind if the fighters themselves don't? That's just my opinion. And I know it's not a mainstream take on the subject, but I will say this. I do have to run. Been on the air with you for almost 3 hours. DS, thank you for being the gracious host, brother. Thank you for the intriguing conversation. And, I will say this. You're a very, very passionate fan still. After how long have you been on the air covering the sport?
Probably about 12 years.
Okay, which is very rare for someone who's been covering the sport, and you still have that emotional attachment to fighters in the fights. That's a beautiful thing. Don't ever lose that, man. Because I tell you what, I wish I still had it. Because the fights would be a lot more fun still if I did.
Right. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. And,
do everything you can to maintain that, because the fights and the fighters, if you still have that emotional attachment, it's so much better, isn't it?
Yeah. And, I think that a part of it is you have to be consistent. You have to stick to your guns. And the last thing you want to do, especially on a public platform, is to flip flop and chase the popular fighters because you want to be relevant. I can't stand it. Channels do that all the time, chasing clout, chasing the fame, the glamour to get views, whatever it may be. And for me, I'm not going to be as popular as a lot of the channels ever. I mean, I'm just never going to be, because I support the styles of Devin Haney and these type of fighters because I appreciate the skill set. And a lot of the majority of fans who would otherwise give me a lot of views are saying, "Oh, fuck that style's boring."
Yeah, man, Don't worry about that. But you've been pretty straight line. Tell the truth. I don't think you're doing it for any other reason than that's the truth.
Well,
for you.
You know what's funny, Frank, and I will say this, and this is the last thing I'm gonna say. And thank you once again for allowing me to be on your show tonight. Thank you. I will say this though, most people they have a hard time kind of sizing me up because I don't think like a fan any longer. I've been covering this sport for way too long, and I've been in this business for a very long time. I am capable of singing someone's praises and also pointing out their shortcomings. I have no problem making that assessment unbiasedly. And so a lot of people, they have a hard time assessing, well, do you like this guy or not? Truth of the matter is, you cannot report on this sport unless you remain objective throughout the entire process. So the only preference that I have throughout this entire process is it positive for the health of the sport or is it not? That's the only preference I have. Everything else is a distant second. So I appreciate the effort of every single fighter as well as every single promoter and every network, okay, because they're the ones who are putting forth the effort in bringing us this brilliant product. And that's it. So, guys, I don't have any dog in the hunt. I don't play any favorites. But I tell you what, DS, I still wish I did. Like I said, man, don't ever take any shit. If anyone gives you shit from supporting Devin Haney or Deontay Wilder, just tell them to go stick it, man, because, dude, ride that horse till the wheels come off, brother. That's a great thing. And I wish I were still a fan that way. I really do. Because, like I said, back then, oh, man, the sport was so much more fun. So don't ever lose that. That's a great thing. And don't ever let anyone ridicule you for it, brother. You're doing a great job. And you're very knowledgeable, man. So it's been an absolute pleasure for the last 2 hours and 48 minutes, sir. Thank you.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for dropping by, and hopefully you're subscribed to the channel, and you can participate in some other combos we have in the future.
God bless you, brother. Take care, Frank.
Yeah, you too, man. Did the combo.
Yeah. Well, look, we kind of went off in all kinds of different directions tonight, but sometimes that happens. You know, we just you tap into certain topics, and you got to express your opinion and solidify those opinions as best as you can. And so that's what happened tonight. And when I put the link public for people to click in and come in, it tends to happen. But once again, just like last night, Frank, it's all out of good faith and talking about the sports. And at the end of the day, the more conversations we have, the more energy we put back into the sport, and the more, I guess, added pressure we put on these fighters and promoters and managers to get these fights that we want to see.
Agreed.
And so that's what that's why the conversation needs to continue. But look, I know you came in a little bit late. It was mostly me and Joe going back and forth for most of the night.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also, hey, I appreciate you letting him know about the stream, because he said that you referred him to come by.
Yeah, I said you had a good stream. You let people talk. You're respectful. I guess I got accused of being a troll, and people are gonna have their feelings, but I didn't sense that from you. And like you said, I feel like, yeah, you have like what Joe says. He comes from an industry insider perspective, which I respect, and I'm a fan like you. I mean, I'm not an industry or insider, so I have my biases, and I can respect other people's. And that's what I sense from you. So I would recommend. I'd say, hey, watch this guy, man. Like, he has good takes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I like I said, man, I've been doing this for a long time, and some of these people that are in the chat right now, like Out of Control Troll, I mean, he's been following me since the very beginning, and it's people like that respect the knowledge of the sport and how you break it down and how you present your knowledge to the people. And at the end of the day, like, I'm gonna be respectful to everybody that comes on here, despite your opinion. We can differ on opinions, but people know that I have a tolerance level, and I won't appreciate or tolerate rather people coming in here and being disrespectful and just trying to disrupt the flow of the conversation.
Right.
So, I love this type of stuff. I like to get into debates. I like to exercise the mind. I like to see and hear what other people are thinking. It's not just boxing. I approach life like that in general, in every single topic. If somebody comes to me and says, you need to support LGBTQ, and I'm going to say, well, why? I want to know what your perspective is, whatever your stance is in life, and you try to persuade me to support it, to understand it. I'm a person who listens. I think by listening, you evolve, you get different perspectives, and it just makes you a stronger and wiser person.
I'd agree with that.
So that's how I try to conduct my channel. That's why I put the links in there. And I'm a pretty reserved and calm person for the most part, until you piss me off. But otherwise, I can take a lot of I can take a lot for the most part. And that's why I'm able to do what I can do, because otherwise it would just be chaos, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's your platform, and you can choose to boo people or allow them to stay. And I agree with you. I can't listen to guys screaming at each other. There's just no way to get in. That's a lot I see going on.
Which happens a lot on YouTube. Yeah. I mean, I'm always looking for a debate and conversation. And I remember when Canelo beat Plant, I was cruising around YouTube looking to see what people were saying, and I ended up finding this particular channel. I won't mention the name, but I found a channel, and they had a big panel going on, and they put the link. So I'm like, obviously I know boxing. I'm not intimidated by anybody. So I went in there, and they were all just like all Canelo fan. Oh, Canelo destroyed Plant. Plant isn't shit. Da, da, da. And I was like, excuse me, I don't agree. I thought Plant was doing well, and they just jumped on me like a bunch of fucking hyenas, and just yelling and screaming, and it's like, that happens a lot on YouTube, and it's unfortunate that you can't have a rational discussion and be able to bounce around opinions and whatnot. But eventually, I was able to kill them with kindness, essentially, and they kind of calmed down and listened to my perspective. I said what I needed to say, and then I got the fuck out of there. But yeah, I do cruise around YouTube. I like to know what the landscape is and what people are saying, and there's some channels that I like to listen to. But for the most part, it's just a lot of bravado, clout chasing, a lot of, people dipping their feet into controversy all the time.
Right.
And it's just like, well, at the end of the day, like, is that really what's helping propel the sport? Not
No, because
really.
if you remember, like Pacquiao fans, but they're gone now. Where are the Pac fans that were in the forums during Pac-Man's run?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, somebody like, as mentioned earlier, Out of Control Troll, I mean, he was around during the Pacquiao Mayweather era when things were heated and I was in the trenches and there was all kinds of crazy shit happening then. And, the game changes, but the players remain the same. And there's not very many of us like myself that has been around since that era. There's very few that have been able to survive through all the chaos. And even for myself, I left for 5 years and came back. So I see Marcus Wall. My man Marcus was pretty much in
Thank
here
you,
for the
Divine.
entire.
My phone
Yes.
is on its last leg, so I appreciate the allowing. Like I said, allowing people to come in and have a different opinion, which, like you've seen, that most people won't tolerate. Um, you know, and I guess you have your fans, and that's okay, and maybe they don't like it, but you stand where you stand, and I respect that.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. And, I have to give credit to you as well, because you're the one that kind of kick-started this whole conversation to be able to go back and forth about Devin Haney and Floyd and all that. And there's a high possibility that I'll do a part 3 of this. So
Okay,
stay tuned.
all right. Well,
Well, thanks for dropping in, bro.
If you have me back, bro.
All right, bro. Yeah, I
Okay,
appreciate
thank
you, man.
you.
Thanks for dropping in.
Okay, keep going, man. Like Joe said, whatever grows a sport, that's what you have to keep in mind.
Yes, sir.
But thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right, bro. Take it
Okay,
easy.
bye.
I want to give a shout out to my man Marcus throwing in that super chat, man. I know you were watching the stream for the majority of the duration, bro. So I appreciate you, man. Much love and respect for anybody who donates to the channel. It continues to motivate me to do what I do. These little super chats here and there helps me, get up in the morning, grab my coffee, and come on the mic and do these type of streams. So, Marcus, I appreciate you, and everyone else that continues to be an official member of the channel. I also appreciate you guys, because you guys are renewing your memberships every month, a couple of dollars every month. And I appreciate you. And if you're interested in that, you can just go scroll down. It says join, click the join button. You can become an official member of the channel. There are times where I make videos that I do not make public, and it can be very controversial issues. For example, when I talked about the Will Smith situation, I made that video for members only. So if you like to have access to those type of things and hear my thoughts, you got to become an official member. Like I said, it's a couple of dollars a month to show your love and support. So thanks for everybody that helped participate in this stream. It was good to see everybody in the chat. If you haven't hit the like button yet, don't forget to do that before you leave. And just to give a recap of the poll before I end it, when it's all said and done, who will have a better career? Tank wins the poll. Sorry, Haney wins the poll at 52%. Everybody who voted for Haney, I'm with you. I agree with you. And let's see if our opinion will hold up. Let's see. I'm confident. I'm confident in Haney, and I'm looking forward to see what else he can do in the sport. And so thank you for participating in the poll, and of course participating in the live stream today. If you're not following me on IG, make sure you do that. I really like to get my followers up. That way, it's an extra avenue for me to alert you guys when I'm going live, because YouTube be on the shenanigans. They don't give you guys notifications. So make sure you guys follow me on the IG. Omega said, Divine, grow out your afro. Let that military cut go, bro. I know my man Omega. I know you got some drinks in you to say that type of shit, bro. Hey, you just kind of get used to it, man. I still cut my own hair. Man. You learn that shit being out in the ocean for 6 months, and the barber is always busy or not available, so you got to learn how to cut your own shit. And hey, I like my shit short, bro. It's too fucking hot out here to have my hair growing out, and I ain't trying to spend time washing it, combing it, brushing it, none of that bullshit, man. I just keep it short and simple, and makes my life easier, bro. So hey, I appreciate that, man. I knew you're gonna say some shit about it, bro. I knew you're gonna do it, man. But yeah, man, much love, Omega, bro. Y'all stay up, and yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next one, man. Y'all stay up, stay strong, stay positive. It's your boy Divine. I'm out.
That's Mamba Boy.